Hello and welcome. You're listening to the Mantic Universe podcast. I'm with my good friend Clem.
Hello.
And today we're joined, and it's a real honour to have him here, by none other than Rob Phaneuf from Countercharge. And
I'm glad to be here, Chris.
Thank you so much for being
much fun.
Rob.
So much fun. I really enjoyed the first couple episodes. So
thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to more content from you guys.
Thanks so much for coming on. So we're just going to do. So when Rob very, very kindly agreed to come on and talk toy soldiers with us, I was kind of thinking, oh God, we've got to think of some really probing questions. I've got to turn myself into Werner Herzog. But actually, that's not really what we're about, are we? To be honest, we're just some friends talking about little toy soldiers, and I feel like that's kind of our IP, right? That's what we do. So dear listeners, we do have show notes. That might not be obvious from the first couple of episodes, but
we weren't sure, but I can confirm that there are show notes for at least this episode. I can confirm.
They might be on the back of a beer mat, but there are some show notes.
You guys, I tell you, like, the longer we do this, like, the more truncated some of our show notes become, because we kind of have, like, second hand between the hosts. You guys are very detailed oriented. It must be the German coming out of you guys. I'm not sure.
it's when I'm nervous. So I'm going to run us through the running order for the episode. So this is episode 3, title to follow. So first we're going to go for a little introduction, obviously. Then I've got a little apology to make from last month where I got something wrong. Well, I know I got a load of things wrong, but there's one thing I just want to make a correction on. Then we're going to talk about Mantic news. We're going to go through the Warpath stuff. So we're going to go through Firefight, Deadzone. Then we're going to move on to the fantasy side. We're going to talk about Kings of War. We're going to talk about Clem's Nightstalkers at the German GT, which we touched on last episode before he went. What we're doing next in Kings of War. We're going to talk about Armada very briefly. And we've got a segment other, so, interpret that as you will. And then our topic of the month, which is something that Rob suggested. So Rob went with a very clickbaity, what a 10
Well, I wouldn't do it on my show. So we'll do it on your show. You'll get more clicks that way, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Changes for Kings of War, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we've just kind of, we've put a slightly less aggressive spin on it, I would say, Rob. So it's what changes would we like to see in Kings of War 3rd edition? And then we'll go into, what we'll be doing, what you can expect for next month, and then we'll just wrap up the show. So, yeah, it already feels like a big improvement on the last couple of episodes that we've gone with that professional. So, fantastic. So, so Rob, thank you so much for joining us again. I mean, it's incredible that you're here. It's just a testament to how lovely people in the community are. And I think, honestly, without Countercharge, I don't think I'd still probably be doing Mantic stuff. Because, I went into Kings of War as my first Mantic game when 3rd edition dropped. Because a friend of mine said, oh, yeah, I like Kings of War. I've got an army. So I was like, great, we're going to play Kings of War. We played one game, and he took this weird, it wasn't even a list. He just got out a load of cannons and a load of shooting stuff. It was this, like, weird bag of nonsense. And just looking at it on the table, obviously it wasn't a legal army, right? And it was like, one of us is going to have a bad time here, right? Because it was my Northern Alliance against just almost all shooting. I think he had, like, 2 regiments that weren't shooting. So it was this horrible game. He got completely destroyed. And then I couldn't get him back from that experience. And it was like, well, it's not really the game's fault, if I'm honest. But, it's awkward. So, at that point, it was a bit tricky. So then it's just a question of, okay, well, I'm committed. I really like this game, and I want to get other people involved. But just having Countercharge and just having you and a microphone and some buddies, all over the world. And I think that's the amazing thing about Countercharge is just how I don't know how if that happened organically, but just how you've grown that out to be, really global.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I mean, I'm honest with you. I got to give credit where credit's due. It's mostly Mark Zielinski was like, hey, we need to get international content, right? We got to do it. We got to do it. And so we did it, right? And I think you said something that's a truism for Kings of War, which is, we all start somewhere in Kings of War or whatever Mantic game you choose. And, first edition for us, 13 years ago, I don't know, been a long time. We would show up at Adepticon and there was like 6 of us playing. It was kind of disheartening. You're like, man, this is a 2-day GT and this is like the flagship thing. And there's 6 people, right? Yeah. But you have to start somewhere, right? You had to start. You can't grow from. You got to grow from somewhere. And so I tell everybody all the time, it doesn't matter how many people you start with. It doesn't matter where you start, it's where you finish, right? So if you start with 8 people, you play with 8 people, and then really the scene really for us got started in 2nd edition, right? When the rules actually became coherent and were something that you could actually play reasonably well. And we had a tournament in Eastern Tennessee, and there was like 7 players showed up, and people were like, "Oh, that's what we got. We played with 7 people. That's fine." And now, there's tournaments around the United States, with 7. I mean, I've got 40 paid for Kings of Memphis. I mean, if you would have thought I could bring 40 people to Memphis to play Kings of War, people flying in,
but
I would have told you.
It never would have happened if you hadn't have just kind of kept the torch and just.
Yeah, well, it's not just me though, right? That's my point. Yeah, it's not just me though. That's the point. There's a bunch of little torches all over this world, exactly. And Trent. I don't know if you guys heard, but we have a new guy that we met at Kansas City GT named Trent Sorsby. He's moving to Germany, right? And he has an interesting story where he just would he's like, I play Kings of War. I'm moving to Texas. All right, who plays? And he found people. And the thing I like to take from his story is just wave your flag. People will show up, right? Yeah, okay, maybe they don't play Deadzone. Maybe they only play Kings of War. Maybe they only like Vanguard. But the reality is that there's some kind of narrative cohesive string that binds all of those Mantic games together. And as long as it's a community, and eventually everybody will try everything, eventually, and just be. But the thing you can't do is you can't shutter yourself in your garage and keep to yourself. You got to go out. And I know it's hard for some people, but you got to go out. Like if there's a gaming store in your area, go there and wave that Mantic flag and say, "Hey, I'm interested in Kings of War. Will you stock it? No. Will you at least order it for me? Great. I mean, lots of stores won't carry it, but they'll order it for you. And if people see you playing any game, right, and you're having fun, like that's sometimes you see people playing games and they're not having fun. I'm like, why are you playing that game?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
It also looks good on the table, right? Like every time I play Kings of War in the shop, like in Battlefield Berlin, people stop by and they look at the table. They look
draws you in, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And then people stop by and ask questions and they get contact info. And maybe you end up doing a demo, maybe not. But that's really how you build a community, right? Like being
it's small acorns, but if someone just sees it and go, "What's that?" It's Kings of War, and it's kind of the same with Deadzone. They're very different games, but Deadzone, the tables always look great as well, right? And it's very very different. Cool. So just moving things on a little bit. So I just wanted to apologise because I said, "Hey, Mantic don't have build instructions." Right? I went on and on about that in the first episode. In the Firefight starter box, they do. There's a little booklet called Getting Started, and me being me, I completely just ignored that, and you threw it out the way and dug into the box, and then later it was like, oh, they do.
Yeah, I think their 2-player starters have instructions, but there's a fair criticism there. They need like, God help you if you have to put a box of fiends together.
I did a few of those.
Yeah, I mean, I might as well just put glue all over my hands and put it in the box and push it together, and there's my fiend. Because I'm like, I know that people tell you, oh, well, they're numbered. Look, man, I got bad eyesight, so I need instructions.
The fiends, they look great when they're built, don't they? But I don't envy anyone building that, Clem.
I'm glad that that's all I can say.
They're built.
Fantastic. So, super. So I think that's going to take us into our next segment, which is Mantic News. And about 30 minutes before we started recording, there was kind of... Rob, did you see the teaser video, which had sand in it?
Yeah, so
and talked about dusting off.
Well, I may or may not have seen some pictures already.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but yes, it's coming, and what's coming is like, woo, I can't wait. If I wasn't already doing a new army with salamanders, the Empire of Dust, oh man, it looks. And though the teaser picture that they showed today in the blog, or the email, I guess the mail digest or whatever, it's got. I'm not sure if he's a a necro. I'm not sure what he is, but he's a wizard of some sort, I think.
Yeah,
on a
I think
horse
so.
rearing
Right.
up. It's really great model. I can't wait.
Surge 50, I'm sure of it.
Well, at EOD, or Empire Dust, I would expect nothing less.
Fantastic. But yeah, it looks really cool. So how are your salamanders coming on? Is it too late?
Not
to
at all.
Jump ship?
I haven't even started yet.
Oh,
Like,
okay. There you go.
I've been doing, I don't know about you guys, but I'm a terrible procrastinator. And I've got an event in 2 weeks. So I've decided, well, I need to make all this new terrain. I don't need it, but I want to make all this new terrain.
I know this feeling. Exactly.
Yeah, so I'm making all this like terrain, and my daughter's down there helping me, and we're staticking, and we're getting dust and static grass everywhere. But at some point, I guess once Kings of Memphis is over, I will turn my attention to I have been buying a lot. I got thanks to my good friend Jeff Franz, I got 3 more boxes of upgrade kits for ceremonial guards. Now I have 20. I'm ready for, but I need, you got to have at least 2 hordes of ceremonial guard. Come on.
Nice. Yeah.
Defense 5 phalanx units, got to have them.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, maybe if you want to give him a shout out at the end if he's got a store. Yeah. Cool. Fantastic. So so we had that bit of news. Steve Hildrew referred to me as a lovely bearded menace. I'm counting that as news. I'll take that any day of the week. Yeah, lovely bearded menace. Yeah, not bad.
Well, you could have been a lot worse. You could have been called a lot worse. And I know Steve's called me a lot.
I get called a lot worse.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely,
that's a positive thing.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. I'll take that all day. And also, Rob, have you seen, and obviously Clem too, there was some new artwork which was just a space battle with spaceships, which, kind of...
It's got people thinking, is there going to be like a Battlefleet Gothic kind of thing coming? Silent Death, Drop Fleet Commander. I would love it. We're going to touch on Armada. Armada is one of the greatest things that come out of them in a while. It's a really fun game.
Yeah, it's really good. And I think from Mantic's perspective, I think, a lot of people are very excited about their sci-fi stuff, probably in a way that maybe hasn't happened before. I don't know, but it seems like there's a lot of excitement about it. Let's be honest, GW aren't making a spaceship game right now. They haven't got anything out, so it seems like a really smart space to go into, and just see how it goes, I guess, like they did with Armada, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Super. And they've also announced Mantic board game division. That's cool.
I don't know. Does that really I don't know. What were you guys' thoughts on that? For me, it was like a division. You have 27 people or something like that. Like, what are you gonna pull 2? You're gonna pull 2 people over, and they're gonna be the division.
The word division is probably a little bit of marketing. Yeah, it's probably. It's going to be like 2 people, isn't it? Probably.
I guess what it does is it maybe distracts, because one of the criticisms is that Mantic tries to do too much.
Yeah.
And maybe by saying, hey, look, this division is gonna handle board games, that means the rest of these folks are all focusing on the war games stuff.
I think hopefully it's like a steady income, right? Because at the moment, Mantic, I think, have a bit of an issue that they've only got so much bandwidth, so they're putting out one thing at a time, right? For the most part.
Yeah.
So, they're going, look, Kings of War Armada, and there's this new product, everyone buy it. Deadzone, everyone buy it. Firefight, everyone buy it. And at the moment, everyone is buying it, and I think it seems to be doing really, really well. But if they have a dud, if they put all this effort and energy and money into producing a new line that doesn't sell so well, I think they're probably in a tricky spot. So having kind of a board game, it's probably a trickle of money coming in every month. It's probably quite a smart thing to do, right?
Yeah, and as they push away from Kickstarter for their wargaming stuff, they've already announced this is going to be on GameFound, which is Awakened Realms crowdfunding service. So, I imagine.
Is it just a better deal to Kickstarter?
It is. It is a better. Well, I actually think it's more than that. I don't think it's just a better deal, because it was established by someone that has lots and lots and lots of quality Kickstarter launches. They really understand the deficiencies of Kickstarter, and they created a platform
that's so interesting. So it was a content creator who. Yeah,
Awakened Realms. I think they're out of Poland. I'm not huge into this, but Nexus. Don't quote me. They've got a couple games. They have more than a few games, and they, very prolific Kickstarter company. And don't kid yourself. Mantic is at one point was number 10 in terms of money generated on Kickstarter out of all the board game. All the tabletop gaming groups. So, it's certainly a needed avenue. As you said, it's kind of like you need that that consistent paycheck. It may not be a lot, but you need that consistent paycheck to hold you over while you get the ups and the downs from your other things.
Exactly. Cool.
Potentially different audience as well, right? Like people who will buy into those board games might be people who discover the hobby, and it's maybe less frightening to get started with just one box of a board game.
It's a really good point. Clem. Yeah.
And then maybe you realize, I actually like having miniatures around. Like how a lot of people started with miniatures, at least in my group of friends, is with stuff like Space Hulk, right? Like you buy a box of Space Hulk, everything is included in the box. You can play it without putting any paint on the miniatures, but you have miniatures,
and then if they were painted. Yeah, that's a really good point, Clem. Yeah.
You also realize, but the people who make this game also have other games with more miniatures that also look so cool, and maybe I want to try Deadzone and stuff like this. So I think it's a good move to also open other like audiences to have board game division in a way. And I think separating it into a different entity, so to speak, probably makes it clearer internally, like to make sure they don't mess up or mix up all the projects. And so, division is kind of an interesting term for like 20 or 30 people, but like total. But still, I think it's an interesting.
And actually, I think that's a really interesting point, is that just getting off topic a little bit here, but just like trying to get new people into the hobby. I think often we talk about convincing 40k players to come and play, but there's obviously many more people who have never played a Warhammer, a Games Workshop game, in the world. There's like, maybe we focus too much on convincing the old 40k players or the old Warhammer Fantasy players to come in. Maybe there's other people we should try and attract,
Well, and with a property like Umbrella Academy, you got a chance, right? Like that's a very popular,
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Cool. So, some cool stuff, obviously, in being teased this month. So, so I think we'll move on to talking about the Warpath stuff. So that's all of Mantic's sci-fi games, and we'll start with Firefight. And I nearly said Firefly. Every time I nearly say, Firefly. And then I do like Firefly.
I do like Firefly as well. It's a great property. The board games from Gale Force 9 are great. Yeah.
Fantastic. Cool. So, and we were talking earlier about problems with instructions and models. I needed the help of the Firefight Fanatics group to save my Forge Father APC tank thing, because I just built that wrong, and it just had, the tank had huge gaps in it. So with a little bit of, just kind of smashing the bits off from each other, re-gluing it, I've managed to save the situation. So thanks everyone, Firefight Fanatics.
I had a similar situation. I was assembling, I think it's the Hornet, like the big flyer from my Plague. And I was like, what is this part doing? And I don't remember, there's a super nice blog with tons of instructions, also tons of demo armies, like until someone loses an eye or something.
Yeah, so that's Mike Carter out of Ohio. He was one of the first Pathfinders in the U.S. and ran a lot of the early events. In fact, I heard a rumor too, he's heading up the American effort for the WTC. The WTC is trying to get Kings of War going, and I think he's helping with getting an American team over there. I don't know where there is, but yeah.
Amazing. Oh, that's really exciting. Fantastic. Sorry, Clem. Yeah. So your Hornet's looking a lot better now you've had some help.
Yeah, it's the same thing, right? Like some parts were obvious, and some other parts were, let's say, less obvious. And with more pictures and like some description, okay, here are the options, you can do it like this or like that. Like, oh, right, like I understand a bit better what's going on here. And I think it's again one thing, like one criticism or like comment. Mantic should just have 10 times more pictures on the website, I think. Like for every single model, I want to see 5 pictures from all angles, different paint jobs if possible, like from community and so on. And I think it would help a lot. With
a lot of this stuff, and as well, you could probably kind of crowdsource this to some extent, so you could actually kind of get the community involved and say, hey, have you painted up a great looking Ector model? Well, send us the pictures and we'll put it on the Mantic website, and everyone can enjoy your.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can tell I'm kind of run down at the moment, because when I'm sort of tired and up against it, I always start to get my dates wrong, right? So I thought I was playing Firefight before this episode, but I'm not. I'm playing Firefight in 2 days on Sunday. So, we're recording this Friday night. And I was supposed to be at a games club the other side of Frankfurt tonight to play a friend of mine, and I completely forgot. So thank goodness he sent me a text saying, "Hey, sorry, I'm still in a meeting. I'm running late."
Karma. It worked out perfectly.
Stop! Do not leave your house. So yeah, many apologies to my friend Dominic for screwing things up so royally tonight. So I still haven't played my first game of Firefight. It's coming on Sunday, and I'm playing against some Plague, Clem. 1,000 points of Plague. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you should do. You should get some experience fighting them, because you're gonna see mine pretty soon as well.
Yeah, exactly. Experience being eaten by the plague. And I've been working on repainting my. I had like an old GW Realm of Battle board for Age of Sigmar, which I'd kind of tried to make it. Basically, I was being lazy when I painted it years ago, and I thought, well, maybe if I just kind of dry brush it crazy colours, it'll look kind of Zinchi and magic-y. And it sort of does, but it also looks pretty rubbish. So I just airbrushed it all black again, started again, and just got the airbrush out. Blue, very, very basic colours, but it looks an awful lot better than it did. And then I went crazy. I think it was seeing all Nick Williams's work recently, which is just amazing, to be honest. It really is. So I ordered some stuff, and I had a go at making some hills and some forests. They, I'll be honest, they don't look anywhere near as good as Nick Williams's. That's putting it very mildly, but I'm kind of happy with them. I did them. I haven't thrown them in the bin. They're on the table now. So that's cool. That's kind of cool.
They exist. That's a pretty good argument in their favor, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they're not in the trash can.
Exactly.
Right?
They're not in the trash can.
They're going to see the table at some point.
Exactly. And I got these. They're kind of StarCraft style buildings. They're from MicroArt. They really remind me of StarCraft, the video game or computer game. And but they'll work really, really nicely for Firefight. They're good size, and either as a building, or actually they could also work as a hill. There's pictures on the Facebook group as well, because it could be a sci-fi hill. Why not? So that's cool. So I've got loads of stuff done. I had a little test game with myself, which is not something I usually do, but that was good. Yeah. So I've done lots of Firefight without really doing Firefight this month.
Yeah, I mean, I've been also assembling more Plague, because I don't know how many Plague units you need, but my answer is usually more. And so I think now I have 60-something zombies and 60-something ghouls.
It's a good start. It's a good start. Yeah.
It's a good, and quite a few aberrations as well. So, because obviously in Plague you want to have the big guys, I think.
Aberration is the word I couldn't remember in the first episode when I was talking about Maison Labs.
Right.
I think I kept calling them abominations and then something else. I'll never remember that, though. I'll always get that wrong, I think. My brain can't cope with that. It's hard to say. I can't say it.
Yeah. That's the guy. And so I have now, I think, more than enough Plague. And I'm still tempted to get more, because why not have more zombies for like apocalyptic battles with tons of zombies and like nice and cool scenarios. But maybe later. No, I think the next thing will be. I also got some GCPS.
PTSD.
Whatever. It reminds me some acronym from work, and I always get mixed up. But anyway, so those guys, because I think that will be my next army. So I found the old Mega Force, and I need to get the Strike Force as well. And pretty cool.
I think those models are great.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, do you like Starship Troopers? Do you like Aliens? Do you like
exactly?
Come on down. We've got
Colonial Marines, right? Let's go, baby.
Exactly.
Would you like to know more?
Yeah, and so in the first episode, Rob, me and Clem were talking about the old Warpath Mega Army boxes and going, God, they're such good value. Like, not all the models are absolutely amazing, but bang for your buck, they're incredible value. And I said already, well, I had a Plague Mega Army, and I've got no real plans to find Plague. But then after the episode, I was like, I wonder if there's any more Mega Army boxes available near me. So I've now got 2 Plague Mega Army boxes with no plans of doing Plague. So how much Plague does a man need?
But it's trade barter. You have stuff. You have a person that wants to. He's already said there's no limit to his Plague Affliction, so therefore you can just trade, and that's how it works.
How contaminated by the plague can you be?
Yeah, you can just enable him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sounds like a good plan.
Absolutely, and so that's all sounding really cool. Hey Rob, what are you thinking about Firefight? You don't talk much about the sci-fi stuff. Have you got any interest?
Yeah, we're gonna start. They've got an episode. They being Jeremy is all on it, right? Him and Tyler Schultz are all about it. So we'll have an episode next couple weeks. But for me, I play Deadzone. I play Deadzone. Like I'm almost 50 years old and I don't have as much time as I used to have, right? And with the podcast and the events I go to, like it feels like I don't ever have time to just play. But I do have a GCPS army for Deadzone that's painted. So, and I have a bunch of stuff that was already out, prime, ready to go for that. So I bought into Firefight. I bought the starter box for GCPS. So I'm gonna play GCPS when I get off my duff.
Nice.
Locally, we had a lot of people pick it up. We have a very big group here that plays Deadzone, probably upwards of 20 people, and they've all been very excited about the opportunity that Firefight brings because, many of them have probably played 40K in the past, but this is a much different game than 40K. Much different game. And if you like 40K and list building and gotcha moments, this is not the game for you. You're not going to like it, right? It's a different game. They've taken alternating activations, kind of like in Legion. They've taken the dice mechanic, the exploding 8s and D8s out of Deadzone. They've taken the command dice from Vanguard. They've kind of picked and choose, which I think is really awesome. And I think they've kind of like Frankenstein into this awesome mechanical game. And so we're excited to try it. What's going to be interesting to see is the non-faithful, right? We have lots of faithful here. They're all about Mantic games. They're going to play it.
Yeah.
But the non-faithful, the guys that are playing, what are those guys going to do? Because even though I will tell you 100 times Deadzone is much better than Kill Team, getting people to jump from Kill Team to Deadzone has not been easy, right?
No.
It's and I'm just curious to see how that'll trans. I'm curious to see the end result. Are we going to get 40K players? I mean, it's a slow burn, but we do have AOS players that have jumped over to Kings of War because they didn't like those things like list building and the constant chasing of the dragon, right? And so, or constant meta chasing.
When you're new to it, because I played AOS in 2nd edition, and when you're new to it, that's not a problem because you buy one of the new armies, the models are nice, and no, that's fine, I don't mind. But it wears you down after a while, and when you see there is an alternative, once you've been on that treadmill, it's like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Why have I been on this treadmill?
So some people absolutely like the treadmill, and that's fine. But for me, you go back in the day when we were playing fantasy, and you go to an event, and you show up, and I'm like, oh, I'm playing Chaos, and they're gonna do this spell, and this spell, and in 3 turns, you're not going to do anything, and your game's going to be over. I don't know. There's something to be said with knowing what army. If you know the army, you already know what the list is going to contain, and then B, already knowing how the game is going to play out 90% of the time. And to me, that's not much fun. So I do obviously, I'm obviously a big fan of Kings of War, and I'm hoping that same thing will come to fruition with Firefight, that we've got balance. It's technically it's not a 1st edition, but let's be honest, it is, right? It's a complete overhaul. So there's going to be stuff that Dr. Sharp didn't get right, and that's okay. That's what the next edition's for. They'll fix it, and that's the one thing I always have faith in, is that Mantic will get it right. Eventually, they'll get it right. Just hang in there.
I completely agree. And just having the rules committee as well, that is such a leg up on the opposition, that it's not just the company dictating how we play the game. It's the good players fixing it on the fly. Yeah. It does mean you can trust them a lot more than you can trust other companies.
Exactly.
Yeah. And the fact that all the rules get published at once. I mean, we've talked about this many times, but there's no temptation to really go, okay, well, we've got a new army coming out. We better make sure it sells this quarter. You just avoid all that. It's really, really cool.
It's just a different marketing method, right? And alleviates a lot of that desire to make things better, just to sell models.
Clem, have you mentioned the gaming day in Berlin?
I think just in passing so far, but I'm organizing another gaming day for the local community. It's the weekend of the 9th of July. And so far, I think we have around 10 people signed up for both Kings of War and Deadzone and Firefight.
I have my non-refundable train ticket booked, as you know. I'll be staying at the hotel.
I'm on my couch, so that's going to work out fine, I think.
Hey, this is shocking. I've never been to Berlin. I've never been to Berlin. And my sister-in-law lives there, and I have absolutely no excuse, but I've never been to Berlin.
Mm-mm.
But I'm not wasting my time going to, the island with all the museums and galleries on or anything. We're just playing Firefight.
Yeah, just focus on the stuff, obviously. But it's going to be an interesting one. We're slowly trying to organize the local community to play outside of the FLGS because they don't have that many tables, and also they're booked very long in advance. Like if you want to organize a gaming day at one of the main gaming store here in Berlin, you need to think about it 4 or 5 months in advance, and then you only have 5 tables there, and so that limits you pretty quickly in what you can do. And so I found another venue that I can get for free, and that will help a lot to organize slightly larger events and with a bit more flexibility as well.
I suppose the only downside is I guess we won't have people wandering in and going, oh, what's that? Well, this is Deadzone.
Well, that's actually it's not how it went. So that's the second time we will do the gaming day like this, and it's actually my workplace, and it's a huge co-working space, and it is full of nerds, like. But still, people coming over and say, "Oh yeah, I remember I used to do that when I was a teenager. That's awesome. Can I join?" It's like, "Well, sure. Here's my contact info, and come next time, and we'll do demo games and so on." And so I think it's actually a pretty good spot to find new people that are not like, "Yeah, but I don't like Firefight. It's not 40K," and "Oh, I don't like Enforcers. They're not Space Marines." It's like people are like, "Oh, cool, miniature. Yeah."
So we're coming back to this earlier of like we don't necessarily want to just go to the 40K crowd. It's like, hey, you're a nerd. You like the same kind of stuff as us. Well, there's this cool miniatures game. Yeah.
But I've been around this for long enough that if you try to like, hey, this game is better than that. Look, just put it on the table, play it. If people want to play it with you from the 40K crowd, they'll play it. If they don't, they don't. And it's okay. Because I mean, like Clem was just saying, 40K's got a pretty robust history. In the grimdark future, there is only war. Yeah, I mean, people love it, and I get it. Terminators.
I don't get it though, because I think I can't imagine myself. It doesn't feel like I can ground myself in that, because it feels like a 14-year-old boy has gone. Oh, the future is horrible. Imagine it's so horrible. Imagine the worst thing you can imagine. Now double it, and it's so horrible. Yeah. You're getting eaten by an alien the whole time, or crushed in a factory, and it's like, but where are the normal people that I can relate to? Right. There's like the religious fanatics, or you're possessed, or I don't know. But as you say, Rob, loads and loads of people love it. It's not for me.
It's not for you, and that's okay. Yeah.
Cool. And I keep saying on the show, we're not here to criticize other companies, but I just can't help it. So apologies, everybody. Yeah, sorry, dear listener.
I love 40K miniatures.
You are English, Chris, so it's in your nature.
Yeah, I'm very passive aggressive. Thanks for mentioning that, Rob.
I'm sorry, I'm the French person here. I'm supposed to be the one complaining all the time.
So. Excellent. What's Rob as the American? What's Rob supposed to be doing? What's
That's a good question. I don't know. It's funny because the Kings of War is so international. It's always entertaining to watch the interactions between the American. I mean, the Americans are always right? We're always right, and then and the English are never short of opinions. So it's always fun to watch the fanatics blow up when something when a hot take hits. It's like, oh god.
I do just occasionally, and I don't like confrontation. I don't like arguing with people, but just once every in a while, I do like to just throw in a stupid comment and just let people argue about it. What was it recently I was saying? Oh, I think I said something like, painting test minis is for cowards, discuss. And then people go, oh, that's a stupid thing to say. And it's like, yeah, it is a stupid thing to say. That's the point. Just occasionally, I like to poke the bear, but I don't even know why I do it. I don't know. Yeah, interesting stuff. Cool. So moving on then. So it's the Magnetar Deadzone campaign, which has been super cool. I guess, Rob, you haven't contributed.
I have not really participated, but I've been living vicariously through our friends at Deadzone, the podcast. They've been plugging it, and I've been following their progress. So yeah,
they're the nicest guys, though, aren't they? It's just
they are.
Just listening to their friendship, they're just such.
Yeah,
great
Rick and Brian are genuinely probably the nicest people on the planet. Brian in particular is just, you almost think like he's not real. It's like he'll go to a Kings of War tournament and have like just the worst luck, and he comes out just smiling, right? It's he's everything you want in a community person, right?
Yeah, such a nice guy. But there's loads of people like that in the Kings of War community, aren't there, to be honest?
There is.
Yeah, it's crazy. Cool. So, and Clem, I guess you haven't played any Deadzone since the last pod?
No, unfortunately not. I had plans to maybe try it out on Tabletop Simulator, because I know some people locally have tried that, just because it's easier for everyone's schedule. But even that I didn't manage to do. So I focused, instead of building the terrain that I have from my 2 Deadzone starter sets, because I thought, okay, at some point I would want to play with actual miniatures. So I like playing online, like Tabletop Simulator and Universal Battle, but playing with real miniatures is what I prefer ultimately. And so I spent the not so large amount of time that I had actually assembling buildings for the gaming day and for my first Deadzone game that hopefully I will have early July. So that's about it for my Deadzone.
Have you finished your terrain?
I've done 3 or 4 buildings already, and now I have a few leftover pieces. I'll try to do more scattered terrain and see what I can do. I need to think about what color I want to spray it, but I think I'll do something pretty simple. That's the beauty of this terrain. Like, it's not so hard to paint and still looks pretty nice. And I think it's also, what I like about it is what you mentioned about the other universe out there. Like, it's not, oh, everything is so awful, there are skulls everywhere. It's kind of like a futuristic city, and you kind of visualize, at least for me, okay, like something went wrong very recently, and until not so long ago it was a normal futuristic city, and now it's something terribly wrong happened, and then my toy soldiers go around and have a good time. But so that's about it for my Deadzone stuff.
Oh, Rob sharing some nice.
Yeah, it looks like Fanatics is sharing some of these other photos of the EOD. It's off the hook. It's really nice.
It's really cool, isn't it? And Clem, how did you find the terrain went together? Was it okay in the end?
I mean, I kind of had decision paralysis initially. Like, I was like, okay, I haven't played Deadzone.
So many options. I can.
Yeah, like
it's like, where do I even start?
That makes it worse.
Yeah,
it makes it much worse.
What do I want to build? And then I realized, well, you know what? What's the worst that can happen? Is I have buildings that will just be maybe better for firefights or stuff like this. And I can always get another set of the terrain and build more buildings later if I realize, oh, my buildings are nice, but I need some buildings with maybe different features that will be more interesting in the game. So in the end, I went like, okay, I want like a 2-cube building and then a 3-cube building, maybe some hate, because I love Necromunda. So obviously the 3D aspect is very dear to my heart. And so far, that's about it. Like building parts was intimidating because there aren't really, you have this starter set, build those exactly like this, and those are what you need for the starter. But in the end, ultimately, just take your glue and go crazy, and that was it.
It still triggers me, though. I've got these 2 air conditioning units, and they're stuck out. They're not even connected to the building, and it's like, why did I do that? And I did it to try and make a little bit of cover kind of thing, and it's like, every time I see it, it annoys me. I've got to do something about that. Sorry. Cool. So I played 3 games of Deadzone, which I submitted for the Magnetar campaign. and had a really, really good time. I played Patrol twice, which is like the simple, the first scenario. And then I played number 16, which I think is called something like Smash and Grab, or it's something like that. I'm not getting that quite right. But it was a lot of fun. And the different districts, so the entertainment district, I think there's the port district, they all have different special rules, which was super, super cool. So we had some weather effects that really affected the game in a really good way. So there was a game where the GCPS Strider, which I had no way of effectively killing, it couldn't activate for 2 turns. So that was really exciting. It was really, really funny. It all came down to a dice roll. And there was a Teraton from a Dreadball team who was just kind of randomly looking for supplies. And it was 4 VPs to the person that can catch him. Got to catch them all. Yeah, I had some great fun. So I was the Forge Father, so I've got an all Brockers / Artificers list, because I just think those models are really, really cool, and their abilities are fun. It's just fun to have little dwarf miners running around the place. They're rubbish at shooting. I think in 3 games, I think the Brockers managed to actually effectively kill one thing from shooting. It was something really bad, but other than that, they did really well. It's just fun, angry dwarf miners. So I won 2 games and I lost 1, but the one I lost was a really rough ride, because I was the attacker and I had to be on these scenario points, and then I had to have a long action to score 2 VPs. So I had to get on the point and then sit there for 1 turn, and then next turn I could score the point. But my opponent had drone strikes, grenade launchers, and something else, and a mortar that if they hit me, I scatter, so it knocks me off the point. So then I have to spend another go moving back on the point, and then wait another turn where he knocks me off the point and I have to get back. So that was a bit of a rough ride. So I got completely tabled on that one. But I still even had a chance to win, and I think I made one stupid decision to try and kill the Strider, which was a very unlikely thing, and I should have just gone for the victory points. And if I'd have gone for the victory points, I'm not saying I was going to win, but I had a chance to win, whereas blazing away with my leader trying to kill the Strider, which has huge amounts of armor, it was just a stupid decision to make. And as I was making it, I knew it was a stupid thing to do, but I couldn't resist the kind of, I've got some shoot dice, I'm just going to, unload on the Strider. Yeah, take that. Does absolutely nothing. But, it felt good. It felt good at the time. So that's running. The campaign's running until the 20th of June. So we've still got a fair old while to go. So my game of Firefight in a couple of days, so I'm definitely going to submit that. And we're also going to play, so we're going to play 1 game of Deadzone, so I can show my friend Deadzone, and then we'll play 2 games of Firefight. So I'm super looking forward to that. And that's, what a nice Sunday that is. Yeah. And then next week in Germany is a bank holiday Thursday. So I've taken the Friday off. So next week I've got a 3-day week. I've got a whole day of playing Toy Soldiers. And then
you're living the dream. Living the dream, yeah. Exactly.
So I think, has anyone got anything else to add in terms of talking about sci-fi?
Yeah, just quickly. So when you play Deadzone, do you have still the same opponents, or how do you organize this?
So I've played so far. So I've played my friend Dominic, who lives in a small city called Fulda, which is 2 hours drive away. So we found a fairly big and well-established game club, which is the other side of Frankfurt to me. So it's basically an hour away for him and an hour away from me. So we kind of meet in the middle, if this is making sense. Tonight I should have been there to play him, and I'm a terrible friend. Sorry, Dominic. So he's painted up some Rebs, but slightly annoyingly, he's got a resin 3D printer. He printed up some printed them, painted them, and only at that point did he look at the Mantic website, which I recommended to him, and said, Mantic Rebs are so cheap, I should have just got them. And it's like, yeah, you should have. So, never mind. And then last weekend, was it Sunday last weekend? I went to meet another friend who lives in another small city called Limburg, which is about 30 minutes drive north. So it's kind of towards Cologne from me. And Dominic, he's a super, super nice guy. And we had to. He's got GCPS, which again, unfortunately, is 3D printed, but he's made them look really nice. He does have Mantic models, but he doesn't like assembling Mantic models for whatever reason, and that's fair enough, So so he had this kind of deliberately kind of like Magnetar themed GCPS arm, and he had this kind of backstory to them that they were kind of like they were veteran soldiers that kind of got promoted, and now they're almost kind of like Siegfried and Roy style shows in kind of Magnetar casinos, and now suddenly there's a Deadzone there, and they've got to do stuff, and they've got all this kind of like fancy armor that isn't very practical, and it was he had a really cool story to it, so it was really, really enjoyable, and they totally tabled me in one game, so they got their revenge. For the Forge Fire, there's 2 wins and a tabling. I submitted. So, but I think we're doing okay. The Forge Fathers. We're not near the top, but I never am. But I think it's looking. Enforcers are doing well. GCPS are doing well, and the Rats are doing well, which makes perfect sense given the story. The story beats right of what's actually happening, which is cool. Yeah. Cool. Right. Are we good to move on to talking about fantasy stuff?
That's our passion. That's the passion, right? Yeah, I mean, sci-fi stuff is good. Get you up in the morning, but man, Kings of War is what keeps you here.
Fantastic. So, Rob, so this isn't in the notes, but you were at Bug Eater, right?
Yeah. So 44 or 46 people played. It was great, and it was a humbling. I'll just mention just a short recap. It was a humbling experience because I took my. Here's my theory. At this point, the high defense army, you can't win with it anymore. I think there's so much. Yeah, I think the propensity of crushing strength is out there now, and there's just so many counters to that skewed list. I'm not going to take it anymore. I mean, I got tabled by Ratkin. I got tabled by Ratkin slaves. Who knew?
Wow.
Ratkin slaves.
What did the damage, Rob?
All of the monsters and the tunnel runners.
And so, sorry, what was your list? Wait,
it's basically so it's 4 hordes of siege breakers. It was Namagarok and a warlock.
So it's the tough stuff. It's the tough.
And it just the problem is it's so elite. Those 2 lists in particular, and I should mention halflings also did me over pretty good too.
Really?
Because their trolls, yes, they hit on 4s, but they have Pathfinder built in. Right. So so I really I went 2 and 3. It wasn't the greatest of showings, but I still had fun. It was fun, and I got to play a bunch of new players I hadn't played, and I got to see it. Rack and Slaves, we joke about them. That list has the tools. You just got to put it together, and that gentleman put it together, and he beat me like a redheaded stepchild.
Isn't it interesting in that game though that like a while ago people were saying how Twilight Kin were rubbish, you can't play them, and then someone goes out and wins a tournament with them. It's like you can, we just don't understand how they work properly. Then people were rubbish, very low on dwarves because they're so slow. Then suddenly dwarves are amazing. People figure it out. It's so interesting how it evolves with the same,
and the Ratkin player won the event, and he was against a Twilight Kin player on the top table. So and we'll have an interview with him because this guy, I don't know how he does it. He is an AOS player who only plays Kings of War twice a year.
Really?
And he built a list specific for this event, and he crushed everybody. It wasn't even close. He just dismantled everybody's army. Rat can have all the tools. You just gotta know how to put. I mean, it was like, I don't know how to explain it. It's just, I felt like I was in high school, and I was playing like a professor. This is like no. He's like no. That theory went out 5 years ago, bro. Let me show you how this works. Bam, 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 bam. I was like,
things have changed, old man.
Things have changed, matey. Yeah, it was bad, but
Ouch.
Still fun.
Was it? Yeah.
Even when you lose.
I mean, to be fair though, 2 and 3, that's my aim for the tournament. If I win 2 games of the tournament, I'm like, yes, I've done it.
I think it really showcases what I've always, and I think most people would tell you, to win a tournament you got to get lucky, right? You got to have the right matchups. You got to have the right scenarios.
Rob, there's not enough luck in the world for me to win a tournament, and I'm okay with that.
I only win a tournament every 5.
I wouldn't want to live in this world where I was people like me were winning tournaments. That makes no sense.
Well, I only win a tournament every 5 years. So I've won one in 2016 and I've won one in 2022. So I guess I'm not due again until 2027. So
but when it happens, it's special. But the thing is, if you're Tom Robinson or someone, it's like you're the New Zealand rugby team. When you win, you don't really enjoy it because, of course, we won. We're great. But then when you lose, it's like, damn it, we didn't win. You know, something's gone terribly wrong. That's a very stressful place to be.
So maybe this is the part where I ask you guys: do you guys have soft scores in Germany? Like,
it doesn't seem to be such a thing, to be honest. I mean, it's kind of like a best painted award and things like that.
It doesn't count for the ladder, right?
Right. No, so that's what I'm saying. You got to move somewhere that you have soft scores. So if you're not a good player, you can be a nice person and have a beautifully painted army, and it helps you move up the ladder.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really care about winning the tournament in the end. So that's I mean, when we play locally, that's also one issue, right? All the people here in Berlin, they don't really like tournament style play. And so when we do gaming days, we do gaming days. We don't do tournaments. And when I'm like, hey, do you want to travel with me and go to Hamburg or Cologne or whatever it is, wherever there's a tournament? Like, yeah, but tournaments, you know, man.
It has a negative connotation for sure. And that's something we as a community need to work on, because the tournaments are a lot of fun, right? And yes, there is competitive play at the top table, but where I'm normally playing, we're just having fun.
Yeah. I wish I'd started, because actually, I'm a pretty, pretty confident person, but actually in some ways I'm not at all, right? I'm putting myself out there, like going to a tournament with a room full of people I don't know. For me, that was quite a big deal. And I wish I'd done it sooner, because, as you say, Rob, the Kings of War people are lovely, and you're probably right. At the top table, those guys are competitive. They're there to win. But I mean, Clem and I went to the GT in Cardiff last year, and it was a load of people like me, just like, let's roll some dice and have a laugh. And I met some just wonderful people, and we had such fun together.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great, tournaments are, there is that competitive aspect to it. But what's even better than that is the camaraderie and the hanging out with the friends and showing off your new army and, having a good time,
playing new people, seeing new armies as well. I mean, the thing that I like is, you get different experience, like gaming experience, and okay, I'm going to spend a weekend to go there, so there's some investment. But I will play kind of as much as I can, right? Like, you will fit 3 games in a day, which is like as much games that I get in 3 months usually, right? Because we don't play that often. Like, everyone has super busy schedules, and so it's not that often that we set up Kings of War games. When you go to a tournament, you get a big shot
of... It's so intense. You learn a lot. You're playing against armies you probably haven't ever seen before, so it is really, really exciting. And Rob, how is it for you? And I know we're getting into the weeds a bit here, but this is super interesting. Like, how is that tension between you doing stuff for Countercharge and you almost being like a roving reporter versus, well, to be honest, I just want to play,
I mean, those are like mutually, well, and sometimes it feels like it's mutually exclusive and they're pulling against each other. But like at Bug Gear, I mean, I just set the gear up. It's over there. And like, if I get something, I'm like, oh, that was a really fun game. Let's go talk about it. Like, if I get the bug, I'm more and more, I'm not forcing it. Like, if there's, if I think there's something interesting for us to discuss, we will. And like Sean Troy, who won the event with his Ratkin list, I do have a recording with him from the event, but like, this guy is like, he's a mad scientist. So like, we got to get him on for a couple hours. We got to get him in the List Builder studio. How the hell do you only play Kings of War like 6 times a year, only go to 2 events, and you come and smash face?
This is fascinating, with something that is, let's be honest, a bit of a joke list, and people even say, why is the army even in the game?
Well, this was regular Ratkin, so it's...
It wasn't Ratkin.
Yeah, so it was regular Ratkin.
Yeah.
The Ratkin Slave guy also, though, finished in the top 10, I think, so it was great, But anyways, to your point, it is something that is always in the back of your mind. Number one, do you want to haul all that crap up there? It is a pain in the ass. I got these. I have to like bring like a dolly, and I've got all this gear. I mean, I'm going through it right now because we're going to the Masters, which is in Seattle. I can't drive to Seattle. I don't have 30 hours. So I got to fly. Well, I can get the mixer on, but how do I pack all those mics? So I'm like experimenting with like different lavalier mics, kind of like what Clem's using, just to see, can I get a cheaper mic that still maybe doesn't sound quite as good, but I can actually carry it on an airplane. So it's going to be interesting to see how the coverage goes with that. And that's one where I'm not playing. I am going just to sit there, and we'll get 50 or 60 hours of content with, everybody's favorite people. And go ahead.
Have you talked about, and sorry, I'm getting way off topic now.
It's
have
all right.
You talked about with Countercharge doing a Patreon or something like that, talking about having to buy equipment?
Nope.
About trying to cover your
Nope,
costs?
we don't do that. So as soon and I've had like knockdown, drag out fights with some people. As soon as you do that, it's a job. I'm getting paid for it. Nope. I'm not poor. I can afford my own gear. The guys on the guy. If you want to be a host, these guys they all chip in. Streamlabs not cheap.
I've got a funny feeling Croger's got a few quid, as we'd say.
Yeah.
He's doing all right for himself.
For sure. Yeah. that shady medical practice that he runs, right? Like
that's exactly right.
But we've talked about, we've had some people like, why don't you do a Patreon, or why don't you do, because I don't want to. Like it's just, this is free. This is what we do. This is our gift to the community.
Yeah.
You don't have to listen, but if you listen, great. If you don't, that's fine too. But like, as soon as there's money involved, it like changes things.
And and I'm assuming off camera, it's like off mic, Jeremy is just the most negative person in the world, right?
so he is.
Once you switch that mic off, he's like, oh, I hate you guys.
Well, I'll be honest with you. Like, there is some truth to like public personas. Yeah. But he's pretty much the same person on the mic as he is in real life.
Yeah.
But you talked about like equipment and stuff. Like we don't have the best equipment. Like you don't need the best equipment. Right. It's about the content, right? You just do the best you can with, when we started, I talked about that first event in second edition where we had 7 players. This person that was running the event shows up and says, hey, I used to do a podcast. I know you guys are doing one. Why don't you have this mixing board? Like, and that got us going like that. He gave us equipment to get us going at events rather than just recording locally from home. And, over the years, you just slowly evolve.
So that's a game changer, right? Because it changes how you can.
Well, at that point, we had done lots of episodes and it was all done recorded from home. But now it's like, oh, we have a mixer and we got a couple mics. Ooh, now we can go to events and record live from the event. All right. And then you add a couple more mics and a few mics. And then 5 years later, you add, let's buy a new mixing board, and you just slowly buy it. And you have, I mean, the trick here is you got to have a partner that's in it with you. Like, she doesn't like Kings of War, but she doesn't like poo on anything I want to, if I want to.
She loves you enough to let.
Yeah. So it's like, you need this. And so like right now I'm going through it with like I explained to her, like, I can't carry these 5-pound mics on an airplane. What are we going to do? She's like, well, I guess we got to buy some new mics. We'll buy some new mics. So, yeah.
Yeah.
That was a pretty circuitous route to get back to. I think your original question was, how do you like balance recording and playing? And the reality is, if I'm there to play, I'm going to play first, and I'll find time to record.
Yeah. So instead of balancing the scales, you're just weighing down both scales with an equally extremely heavy weight. And
it works too. And also, if you go to an event with multiple people, like I am totally cool with like, we got local players. I'm going to give Devlin Smith a shout out. He's one of our local players. If he's at an event with me, I'm happy to say, do you want to record with somebody? And I'll walk away and they can, I mean, he's not, we've had enough people that co-host or have done stuff with us that I'm not the only content creator that can do this. I mean, it's anybody can do this. All you need is to have a little bit of ego and a mic, right? That's all you need.
So true. Fantastic. And actually, that's something we don't talk about enough, is just having understanding partners, wives or boyfriends or whatever it might be.
You can't do it without it. Like, even if you're not even in the podcasting stuff, just traveling to tournaments. I mean, it was $280 for me in fuel for me to drive to Omaha. Now I went with 3 people, so we split that. But the fuel prices here, and I know I'm saying this, and you guys are like, fuel prices. You have no reason to complain. Get it. But we're not used to paying $5 a gallon. Right? Like, this is not something that's normal for us.
This is
right?
This is other people's problem. This is not ours.
Yeah. Now it's my problem. When it's your problem, right? But now it's my problem.
And funnily enough, actually, when we went to the Germany GT, last year's Germany GT, with Clem got the train to me and jumped in the car, and there was just like, you'd randomly been chatting, and there was this other really nice young French guy, Nico, who just needed a ride, and he was on his way to do I think a master's in game design in Brussels, and he noticed, so he was literally moving to Brussels, and he noticed there was a Kings of War tournament kind of on the way. And he was the nicest man the young man, Nico, just the nicest, most wonderful man you could meet. And he just joined us for the trip. And I mean, he was a great player, obviously a super smart guy. And we got that experience completely randomly. We got that wonderful experience of just meeting this lovely young man and having a couple of car drives.
I tell you, that's a big piece of going to tournaments is the trip to the tournament, right? Yeah. I mean, that shared experience, it took us 11 hours to get to Omaha from Memphis. That's 22 hours in the car. You got a lot to talk about.
Big part. Time-wise, it's a huge part.
Yeah, we left on a Friday. We came back on Monday. No, we came back Sunday night. So, I mean, you get to really know your friends, right? You get to really, who you can count on and what armies do they want to play. And you can have all kinds of crazy discussions. It's a lot of fun.
Can. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. And so, Clem, so since the last episode, so the Germany GT, it was going to be at its usual spot in Cologne. Obviously, with the refugee crisis, everything going on, it was moved at the last minute to Hamburg. So unfortunately, I think we only had 10 people attending, and I was one of the ones that dropped out, so I can't complain.
Yeah, I think there was kind of a bad thing happening, like stars or planets not aligning properly, like people having other constraints and dropping out after all, figuring out, I cannot make it after all. And so I think last year we had 40 or 50 people in Cologne in the Germany GP, like that. And this year only 10, but with a lot more people who would have made it otherwise, just couldn't for this one time. So that part was a bit sad, but otherwise the location was super nice. Like, it's super large room, tons of lights, not so loud. So that's really, in my opinion, a perfect location for tournaments.
Were you in the city proper, or were you kind of on the outskirts?
I think it was pretty much in the city. I don't know Hamburg so well, but it was like a 10 or 15 minute public transport ride from the main train station. So nice. Really well connected. I ended up getting a hotel room there just to get a bit more sleep rather than travel the day off. And was just in the area, so that was really nice and easy on the logistics side of things. And 10 people is also not huge, but it means you still get to play a different person, a new person for each and every one of your games. And so in the end, for the experience as a player, it doesn't make that big of a difference between 10 and 40 in a way, right? Maybe there's a bit more variation in skills. Like, I played against pretty good players, I think, maybe more than when you're in a larger tournament and you get sorted out.
Well, I wasn't there for one thing, so the quality is bound to shoot up.
What? Yeah, you were there.
I wasn't there, so,
That's one way to look at it, but anyway. And the tables were also super nice because I think the place is also, like, they also have a local club, and so they have like textured tables and like terrain that really works well for Kings of War. So that part was really cool, and every single army, like every single miniature that I saw, was painted to a pretty decent standard, like really nice looking armies. Like, I posted tons of pictures on our Facebook group, so that's, for me, as also a person who loves the hobby side of Kings of War, a really nice experience. Like, you see so many cool armies in the flesh, or plastic flesh, but still. When you go, so yeah, that's.
It's funny, that's another big bonus of going to tournaments, that especially some of the ones that are on the bigger side, you're just going to see cool stuff you never saw before. And like, and when I say that, it doesn't have to be beautifully painted armies. There was an army at Lone Wolf this year. It was well painted, but it wasn't like, it's not the best painted army in the room. But it was like Middenheim, you know, it was like, not Middenheim, Mordenheim. And it was this table, and it was ruined, and you'd pick up a roof, and then there's this dwarf taking a crap, and like, just like, it was a diorama army display thing, and it was just like, you just don't see that. You know, you're not going to see that.
To look at, yeah.
Yeah. You're just like, oh my God. And Tim did just such an amazing job. And like, it's inspiring because you know, I think he would even tell you, like, you could do that. He didn't pay it to a high level. The creativity really is
creativity of it, and just the idea and the confidence. And actually, that's something I don't think we take enough advantage of in Kings of War. Is like we have this amazing opportunity to do dioramas and Hobbit that you just can't do in other games, right? And maybe we don't take as much advantage, particularly with 3D printing and everything, right? I feel like maybe we're not taking as much advantage of that as we could.
As we should, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Clem, did you play against a Green Lady army? My nemesis Pommersman was there.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was. It's funny because when I arrived, so I knew him already, so I went and said hi and everything, and I thought, okay, that's not the list I want to see because it's basically full cavalry list with 2 hordes of whatever they're called, with the Pathfinder option and item. And so against my Nightstalker list with not so good defense, I want to have the advantage in speed, and I also don't really like someone with basically crushing 2 all across the board. But anyway, so that's what the random assignment gave me. And also, I thought I would play Control for the first scenario. And Control is one of my favorite scenarios, like not just with this army, but in general. I think it's a really interesting, full of options to play.
Is Control, sorry, buddy, Control is the one with the 6 different segments. Is that right?
Yes,
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, you 6 squares and you score 1 VP when you have more unit strength in those squares, except the center one of the opponents
is 2. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that's for some reason that's one of my favorite scenarios because I think there's so many ways to play it, and every army has something to say for this scenario, I think. And so, yeah, I was like, yay, I'm starting the tournament with my favorite scenario. And we ended up playing Raise. So I think that's Raise, right? With the tokens on the line from the center line. So you don't have to go on the other side of the board. And it's also an interesting one, but it's one where you want to have more speed advantage. And against a full cavalry list, it wasn't exactly the case. But long story short, I kind of panicked, or I didn't play it so well, and he managed to chaff me up pretty well with his critters.
Yeah, he's got woodland critters, right? Yeah.
And I mean, my usual plan just didn't work so well, and then it just crashed and burned. And that was still a fun game, but it was like, okay, well, so this is not how this army works. Let me try that again.
But did you understand? Do you think you learned something from that game, Clem?
Yeah, in a way, yes. I mean, that's always an interesting opportunity to see how your army reacts to like a new opponent and a new list, a new opponent's list. And so, yes, it was interesting to see how that one went. And for my game 2, I played against Sylvankin, so pretty varied lists with the big trees, like the Wildfather and a normal one next to it.
Wolfgang's beautiful army, right? With his tree man, yeah.
Yes. And we were playing Loot. So for that game, I kind of pushed forward my plan a bit more, which is to kind of divide between like a sort of static center and really overwhelm on one flank with my faster units. And luckily enough, it worked quite well because he deployed quite heavily on his right flank, and I deployed quite heavily on my right flank as well, so symmetrical. But he had more infantry style stuff that I could kind of hold back with my Soul Flayers because they project quite a threat. and so you don't really want to move your infantry.
Yeah, you blunder into the ambush, which is what I do. Yeah.
And so I managed to hold basically the bulk of his forces there long enough so that my fiends and dragon and like the other soul flayers on the other flank could basically just punch through forward and then turn. And then trees did not live very long when they took fiends to the flank and to the rear at some point.
Brutal.
So that game worked a bit better. Then game 3, I played Salt the Earth against dwarves with tons of Brock Riders. So the Salt the Earth is basically just objective markers that you can destroy at the end of your turn when you control them, if I'm not mistaken. And so the fun thing is my opponent kind of placed objective markers not very symmetrically. And he lost choose your side roll. It was like, well, thank you, buddy. I mean,
so he put all his eggs in one basket, right? So it was like, okay, if I win the dice roll, I'm probably going to win the game, but if I don't, I'm probably going to lose.
There was one side that was clearly better than the other. Like, was not entirely one-sided, but it was better, and I ended up getting that side. So I think it made a big plus for me. And somehow the Brock Riders, they are also scary for my list. Or at least that's what I thought, because they have a pretty high volume of attacks. They're also relatively fast. We also had like 2 lords on Brock Riders. Those guys are really awful. Like, I have also bad memories playing against them. But somehow my same plan basically still worked. Like, I managed to hold one of my weak flank with the Soul Flayer regiment. Like, basically moving forward or backwards just to stay in charge range.
So they proved really useful in the end, right? Because I think we were kind of unsure, because they're not quite cavalry in the front. They're maybe not going to do as much damage as you need, but also they're really expensive. They're not chaff. So we were kind of not sure. They weren't really one or the other, but it sounds like you found a really useful role for them.
Yeah, in the end, I managed. I was happy about it. So the first game, not so much, because they died pretty easily. Like, I threw them in too early, and I thought, I had decided before coming to the tournament, my mission is to keep some Soul Flayer alive till the end of the game. No matter what, I need to make sure some of them survive till the end of the game, because if I don't, it means I misuse them somehow. I sacrifice them too early on. And for the dwarf player, that's exactly what I managed to do. Like, keep them alive long enough so that they still project a threat. And when they go in, I mean, if you manage to disturb the rest of the stuff and they can take a flank, then it's game over for them, for the opponents, right? Like, if you take one of those units in the flank, you're in trouble. And if you didn't manage to do the rest so well, and then you just go to the front, it's kind of a desperate move. And sometimes they can be lucky and get a waiver or maybe block a unit for a turn or two. But yeah, anyway, against this dwarf list, it worked pretty well. And that's also, I think, the first time ever that I completely erased a list from the table. So that was it was an interesting thing also to go into this game like, oh my god, that's not the list I want to see. It's going to be a really tough match for me. And in the end, no, actually, all the pieces clicked together well, and I just managed to wipe the board in the end. So that was a
fantastic,
pretty good one. And then day 2, I played Control against the rich Wristforged Orcs. So from my limited experience in tournaments, the game 4, so the first game and the second day, is a very interesting one because your first games, they kind of sort you through the players list. And usually you play against someone that is really around your skill level.
Right.
And those games are really the most challenging ones in a way, I think. And also the
in
most...
a good way, right?
Absolutely, like challenging, like super interesting, because you really have someone that is kind of at the same skill level, I think. And so it really keeps you on the edge, but you're not winning too easily, but you're not losing too awfully either.
Yeah.
And funny enough, it ended up in a draw, and so I think that's also a good good indication of what I just said. So basically, his list, he had like 2 hordes, a shrine, and the named hero that gives you a -1 when he does damage to you, -1 to hit for the next turn. So a pretty scary like castle or like a turtle center. And then 2 hordes of what are the big flyers, like the Manticore, Hellriders, or whatever they are.
We're somewhere in the right ballpark. I've got 3 boxes of them.
Really, really cool looking models, really nice units, pretty scary as well. And on one flank, I managed to hold 1 horde of those and a dragon with just 1 regiment of soul flayers. On the other flank, it did not go so well. Like I did a dumb mistake positioning some soul flayers, and I ended up with a kind of a small issue of horde of those guys on my flank, which is not exactly the kind of thing you want to have. But somehow I managed to turn this around, and I fought to the last man to end up with a draw. So yeah, super.
One of the really amazing things about Kings of War is, and we talked about this before, but at certain points it might be turn 3 and you think, well, I've lost. There's nothing I can do. I've definitely lost this game. And then, I know a lot of people are just like, right, I don't want to play anymore. But it's just like, no, just keep playing with me, and you really have a chance to come back from it. And that's such it makes for such exciting, swingy games, Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. That was absolutely the case. And it's tempting, right, when you realize, oops, I made a pretty big mistake, and now I have to deal with this. And how can I do this? Like, it's impossible. And actually, you're like in the tournament spirit or mindset, like, oh, I came here to play games, so I won't just give up now. I'll keep playing that game and see what I can do. And it's not entirely over. Like on this other side, it's going pretty well. And it really was, in the end, super interesting game.
Even if you're losing, though, and even if you're in a bad position, I still think there's things you can, you can give yourself little goals, right? Like, well, I'll probably lose this game, but maybe I can hold out here. Maybe I can score this objective, or so like even if you're going to lose, you can still learn. You can still have fun. Just kind of just rein in your expectations of the game. That okay, maybe I'm not going to table this guy and win maximum points, but I'm still going to find little ways in which I can salvage the fun out of this. It's not all about losing.
I'm a bit more petty in this, and I'm like, these units really screwed me over. Oops.
Right. Revenge. Exactly.
These guys, I'm gonna go for them, and these guys will not survive till the end of the game. That's something
fantastic.
And the last game I played Invade against a pretty good Empire of Dust player, and I thought, it's Empire of Dust, it's Invade, I'm a fast army, it's kind of easy peasy for me, right? Like, I'm not used to playing against Surge players because we don't have Surge heavy players locally in Berlin. So I need to be a bit careful about that. I played against Empire of Dust a couple of times on UB2 as well, so I knew a little bit what they can do. But I still went in a little bit too confident. And also thought, oh, that's Invade. You need to cross the line first, right?
Yes.
And
I think Empire Dust is quite grindy. So, like, if you're the one that's over the line, then it's on them to smash through you. They've got to do something because, as it is, they're going to lose the game, right? So logically, I'm with you that it would make sense that you get over the line and then force them to come at you. And if they can't solve that problem, they've lost.
Yeah, the problem is if I remember correctly, I went for charges turn 2.
Okay.
That was way too early, and I bounced off of this, like the biggest, like the Slave Guardians, I think, like the large infantry.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I bounced off of them I needed like a 4 to route them, and you start routing them, and from that moment, everything just goes down in the down spiral.
I've got to say that is just bad luck, though, because you'll never, in Kings of War, if you're putting enough in that you can almost mathematically guarantee you're killing it, you're probably putting too much into something, right? And obviously there's the double one, so
Yeah.
There's always a chance you won't route something, but that's just the game, right? I mean, if you have to roll, I don't know, Rob, if you agree with me on this, but if you only have to roll a 4 on a nerve test, that sounds like most of the time you're going to be doing that, right?
Exactly. You don't want to. We call it kill more, right? Like you don't want to be in a situation where you've wasted resources on top of what you already needed to get to the point where you need snake eyes, right?
Exactly, and I remember I've done this against Nightstalkers where I've so killed that regiment of scarecrows, but then what's all that stuff standing just behind it? Oh, my stuff's dead on turn 3.
No. Oh yes.
Yeah, that can happen. I mean, he was also a very good player, so there's no complaint about it. Like he really positioned his unit really well to get nice surges in. I also learned a lot about so that's how you play a slow-moving army, and how you position your units to cover for each other, and then you get nice juicy charges afterward. And also, as you mentioned, right, like Empire of Dust, if you don't kill something, you need to get back to it a lot again because they will heal a lot.
Yeah.
So that's just how the army works.
Did he have a lot of drain life or anything like that as well?
So he didn't have what is called like the soul.
The soul snare.
Yeah, I didn't have that, if I remember correctly, but he still had enough support characters to drain life and get back some point of damage.
Drain life's horrible, isn't it? Because it's a swing, right? It's not just you're healing; it's taking life off of your stuff and giving it to the nasty.
Yeah,
depends on if you're dishing it out or taking it, right?
Right.
Because as an ogre player, I love drain life. This is the greatest thing ever. Oh, here we come, baby. Here's drain life 8.
A pretty key thing for you, right? Just to keep you in the fight, I would imagine.
Yep.
As ogres, yeah.
Problem is the 6-inch range. You gotta be in the fight.
That balances it out, though, doesn't it? So you've got to be in the danger zone to do it. Yeah. Nice. And
yes.
So what was your final standings, Clem?
So in the end, I went 2-1. So that's, I think, a perfect score, right? Like 2 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw. It's just what else?
Perfectly mediocre, as we would say here in the US.
Thank you.
Countercharger. That's countercharger.
It is countercharger, right? That's what they call it. Countercharger. Yeah.
Perfectly mediocre.
I think
I aspire to be mediocre, Rob. You know that.
Well, you got a long ways to go.
Exactly. I've got to go through a kind of Karate Kid style training montage.
Oh my gosh.
Rocky.
Well, you are the best around, so I have faith.
That's 6 out of 10, so pretty average. I think last year I was also 25 out of 40 players, so it's really very similar ranking, I think. And then the things I was also super happy about is I got 3rd best painted, so that's always nice.
That's awesome.
And 2nd best sport, so that's also, I think, I take it as a badge of pride.
Huge compliment. Yeah, huge compliment. To be honest, I'd feel much, that to me, that knowing I was fun to play with, to me that's actually more important.
Even when you're 2-1, right? That you took some games on the chin, you still gave people good games.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a very important thing, and I'm happy that it's shown also for the other player, right? Because I know how I went in, but it's good to see that people also perceived it this way.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so follow-up questions: how do you now feel about your fiends? And which was the if you had one, which was the most fun game or the most memorable game, to put you on the spot?
Hard question between the dwarves or the Riftforge orcs. I think probably the control with the Riftforge orcs.
It's interesting. That's the draw, because I often find draws the most fun.
Yes,
they tend to be so exciting.
Close games in general.
Yeah,
even if it's a small win or a small loss.
Exactly, Rob. Yeah, exactly.
And that one was super interesting. And I mean, I have to thank a French player. I played a mirror match with Nightstalkers on UB2 before going to the tournament, and I had a different set of items for my Fiends hordes. So basically, the Pathfinder and the Strider items, and it was my first mirror match. those are horrible. Like it was a bloodbath. It was over very, very quickly. And he's slightly more experienced than I am, I think. And he told me, my advice is swap your items and give one of your hordes the Brew of Sharpness, like to make it a really killy unit. And I think it really made a big difference in my list. And so thank you, French player, for your wise advice. It really served me well. And after playing a few more games in this tournament, I also think I might want to trade one Regiment of the Soulflayers for 2 Horrors with basically Baneshant and a little bit more Lightning Bolt. Because I think on a couple of occasions, having Baneshant on the Fiends or on the Scarecrows, because people ignore the Scarecrows, right? And then you get a flank charge with Scarecrows, and they're not great. But if you get the Baneshant on them, then maybe you have a bit more chances to actually do damage with them. So I think next time I want to try it with one less Regiment of Soulflayers and 2 Horrors with Baneshant and the Lightning Bolt. So yeah, that's about it from the tournament. And the other thing, of course, is every time you go to an event like this, you get tons of contacts, and you come back home super energized about going to the next one. So for me, it's also kind of one more confirmation, if I needed it, to really step up and organize events also locally in Berlin. We already organized gaming days, so not exactly tournaments, but something a bit in between. And I think I want to step up a little bit and have a few more tables so that we can invite people from Hamburg or Munich or whoever wants to travel and come visit us. Because I think when you expand a little bit the circle of people who play, it makes it so much more interesting for everyone involved. It's not that I don't like playing with my local players, but obviously when you have new people joining, it's so much more fun.
Energy. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, fantastic. And Rob, what are you doing? Are your ogres finally going in the bin after Bug Eater? What are you?
That's where they need to go. I'm running an event this month, and then there'll be some events in July and August. So I'll probably have to pull out some, it may be time just to pull out some crazy armies. I've got like an all Fleabag riding goblin army. So, and I played that in the past. It's like 20 troops. It's like, it literally looks like Helm's Deep. They're coming over the hill. Here they come. Cannot kill anything.
But they look so cool.
And they win scenarios. It's like, don't play me and loot because you're dead. If I go first, you're I'm gonna grab it. I'm gonna I have 30 units of chaff, baby. So yeah, it's but yeah, probably something like that, or maybe I'll pull out my EOD or my dwarves, or I'm not sure yet. But I'm gonna get the paint. I want to get the salamanders painted up. I just don't know when. We're shooting for the end of the year for the challenge. So
right, I think salamanders were very cool army. Am I imagining this? Do I remember on a countercharge you talking about halflings ages ago, or was that something?
Well, I have another army I could play is and I probably, because I've loaned out my war. So I've got a guy coming in from New Jersey. He can't bring an army, so he's going to use my ogres. So if I end up playing the Ringer army at the event, I'm going to play Kingdoms of Halfmen. So it's Kingdoms of Men, but it's a halfling army.
Oh, right? That's cool. Right.
And it's all this is. Yeah, years before they even had a halfling army. So it's all Westphalia miniatures, which is my good friend Kawe from Canada. The dude's he's insane. That's the only thing I can say. He's insane. And it takes one of takes one to know one, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so I think
back to Kickstarter, I've got some of their models. They're lovely.
They have great stuff. Yeah. I mean, Kingdoms of Men is like that army that, like, when I just want to be the jerk and show up and, like, I know I'm playing dwarves with a bunch of Brocks, and then they like, oh yeah, you hit me on 6s, bro.
Phalanx. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, phalanx with ensnare. It's like, oh, but I don't know. They're a counterpunching army, which is fun. You can't win a tournament with them, which is not really why I'm there. Anyways, I'm there to win a tournament.
I think in Germany there's basically just one guy who is much better than everybody else, and I think he basically wins all the tournaments and very, very rarely loses a game. And I remember a couple of years ago, Elliot Morrish came over for the tournament, and this guy beat Elliot Morrish. But he's got a Kingdoms of Men army. Apparently, he never changes it. He's had the same army for years and years and years, and he trades really well. He knows exactly what he's doing with it, and and he's just a very unassuming guy, but he just always wins.
Awesome.
I mean, that's what really good players do, right? Like, they know exactly what their army can do, and they know it better than anyone else.
Yeah.
And they surprise you with it, right?
Whereas I'm going, oh, look, new shiny stuff. Buy. Oh, I've got to try and make this work now somehow. Yeah, until next month. Yeah. Nice. Cool. So Rob, have you landed on something with that? Are you going to run your Fleabag mounted army? What do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, if I have to, it's a fun army, right? It does two things. You know, the thing when you're kind of like in one of our positions where I think some of us can be kind of a steward of the game, right? Like, you're trying to teach new people. Bringing that Fleabag army, they won't walk away. They will understand flanks very well when they're done, because literally, like, there's nothing they can do to get out of the flanks, right? Like, there's just so much stuff, and it's all speed 20. So I will probably start playing that again, just to help some of the newer guys, or you talked about it too, like Surge. Like, we have a lot of undead players, but we have a couple EOD players, but on our Wednesday nights, it probably wouldn't hurt for me to start bringing some of those Surge armies, because learning to play against Surge is not it's eye-opening. That first time you're like, oh, I move 7, pivot, and now I surge into your flank, and here's 36 attacks hitting on 3s. Oh, you didn't know that's what whites did? It's like, oh, yeah. Well, you do now. So I don't know. I think I'll probably bounce back and forth between goblins. I mean, I also have the traditional goblin list that everybody hates, right? With all the shooting and all the well, it's shooting backed up by mincers and luggets, so it's kind of like it's a double whammy. So as you're shooting, as you're coming into me, like, then I hit you with the luggets and the mincers, and it's like But choice. Cool, problem is too many choices. It's just like Clement with the terrain. There's too many options. So
many toy soldiers, so little time. Cool. Yeah, I mean, and I still haven't played a game since the cookbook dropped, which feels super weird. But I'm going to change that.
That is weird, right? That is very weird.
That is.
Probably rectify that. It's only been out for like, I don't know, 9 months. I don't even know.
Yeah, at this point. Don't know.
6 months.
Yeah, something like that. Don't know. But yeah, I got it immediately and then just haven't touched it. But I'm rectifying that by.
Here's the good news. Since you didn't play it, you don't know that they've screwed up Gladestalkers. I made them too good, so that's a good thing.
I have heard this. Yeah, it's the shooting on fours. 20. Is it 24-inch? Are they really too good, Rob?
No, they really are. They need to go up. They need to go up in points. They're just ridiculous.
Right.
Any of them, any flavor, they're all too good.
Got quite a lot of Gladestalkers sitting in the basement, ready to go. So no.
I mean, elves technically didn't really get a bump, right? Like, they were already hitting on 4s to shoot. The elf Gladestalkers were already pretty good. It's the Twilightkin and the Sylvankin ones that got the bump. I mean, the Twilightkin ones with the poison attacks. I mean, all those units with the built-in hammer of measured force. That's pretty awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Anyways, we'll save that, though. We have a chat later talking about things we would change and fix, right?
Yeah,
save
it. Yeah, we come into that. But I'm just glad it's not me talking about something in the wrong order. That's fine. No.
Oh, no. A random digression is my middle name. I just bounce around.
We do have a guide, but obviously this is just three friends having a chat about toy soldiers. So, we're not. As you said earlier, Rob, this isn't work. We're doing this for fun, right? We're not unless I've misunderstood, we're not getting paid for this. So,
no.
But yeah, so I'm going to be doing the Rift Forged Orcs, which is super interesting because I probably would have, out of the two armies, I was more tempted to go the halflings, and in fact, I'll be honest, I've bought a load of halfling models. But yeah, I just dropped on a Riftforge Orc Mega Army. I've got 3 boxes of the Hellstriders, so I'm doing this now. So I'm really looking forward to it.
I would say that of the 2 armies, I think Riftforge is the most different. I know they have those whole like thing with the halflings where it's combined arms, but like that's not how people play it. They bring the gambler units. They hit on 4s with the blasty 3, and then they bring a bunch of trolls. And the halflings are there just to bring bodies, right? But the Riftforged Orcs really have inspired me. You know, I played against them a couple times, and there's some interesting play there. No problem. Yeah, so there's some interesting play there. I think I think you made the right choice.
Yeah, I think the halflings with the gastromancy, and you've got lots of synergies, which is the way the game's going, which is really, really cool. But I love how it looks with the altar, getting the extra attacks, but it's not guaranteed, and it just
halflings are goblins. Let's be honest. Halflings are just human version of goblins, right? And it's like, yeah, they have a couple. You mentioned they have a couple things like spell ward and the gastromancy, but at the end of the day, I don't think that's enough to make them that unique. I really like the Riftforged Orcs. I think they have some. They have those large infantry that like they know where they're gonna die, so they can like just move to another part of the battle like before the game starts. I'm like, that's great. I mean, that's really cool. So flavorful.
Yeah, and I love the idea of like the lore of like these, this race that just loves fighting, basically getting sucked into hell, and then just having the most fabulous time. Like, oh, this is brilliant. This is like, we're effectively going on a holiday. So it just sounds really cool. And then, Rob, we were talking in the first episode. We were talking about Kings of War demos and how I'm super nervous about doing Kings of War demos with new people, because I feel like Deadzone is easy, right? You get 10 models aside. It's so easy to show people how to move. You get them rolling D8s. It's really, really easy. But with Kings of War, I feel like, obviously, because it's a mass battle game, I'm just kind of nervous about how to demo it. And I'd be really interested, because obviously you've got tons of experience on this, but I just wanted to read out. So I sort of asked the question, and Erasmus Berger on Facebook replied. I'll just read through this really quick, because I think he made some really interesting points. So talking about the demo games. So when he used to do demos, he did this. So he has a quick 500-point game to show the basics of the game, engage people's interests, and then he leads into a 1,000-point game from there. And he's saying basically start the 500-point game already deployed and just kind of add the extra bits. So it minimizes the time spent, the downtime between things. There's no rules dump. It's kind of naturally leading into the game. But then obviously he's mentioned things like be super careful about what units you're playing on either side to make sure they match up nicely and there's no weird, And he specifically says no dragons, soul reavers, or siege breakers. So yeah, that sounded like a really interesting idea for me for a demo game. What do you think of that, Rob? Have you done something similar?
I mean, he's nailed it, right? Like 500 points is not going to give you a sense of the actual game, but mechanically it'll show you how to move units, and this is the magic phase, or the shooting phase. This is the combat phase. 1,000 points is really where the sweet spot, if you really want to learn the game and see all the functions, and a couple things.
Feeling of Kings of War as well.
Yeah, like
you're right,
500 is great to get the mechanics down. Yeah, 500 gets you the mechanics, right? Like how do you move a unit? 1,000 gets you this gets you the feel of the armies. I think he's brought up some good points too, in the sense that if it's you against the person, you can be a little less careful on what you give them, because like you can forget, I have siege breakers, and maybe you forgot that they have crushing too, right? Like you can be a little bit more reckless with that if you're on one side. I'm not advocating let the Wookiee win, but like no one wants to get I'll give you what not to do. I played a demo of Deadzone, and I was learning the game, and my good friend Billy, and I hope he hears this, shows up. He's like, yeah, I'm going to teach you to play the game. Here's the enforcers, blah, 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 blah. I have 3 Forge Fathers, and then proceeded to punch me in the nuts like 9 times and just table me. And I was like, you didn't make me want to play the game. Like you just
good scrub. Well, no.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I can top that actually, Rob. So my very first game of Age of Sigmar was in the Wiesbaden, just our local city Games Workshop. My first game of Age of Sigmar, so a local community guy offered to show me how to play the game, right? And at the time, there was this thing, I think it was called like a Crocnado or something. And it's basically what happens is there was it wasn't cheating, but it was breaking the rules in ways they weren't supposed to be broken. So basically, this frog hero thing rides a magic tornado, and it's okay. Now you can't attack me back. So I played this demo, my first ever game of Age of Sigmar, where I couldn't fight him back, and he tabled me. And to this day, I'm thinking, why did he do that? He knew it was my first ever game.
He was going to beat you anyways, right?
He was going to beat me anyway, exactly. Rob.
But that's not the point of the game. It's not winning and losing. It's showing you how the game was played,
and why you should
play this game.
Why this is fun. Why you should play.
Why
this
is it fun? Exactly.
And the answer was it was not very fun. But there you go.
Well, I mean, I've also been on the other side of that, where like a couple weeks ago, my friend Nick showed up with his partner. They were playing a 2 1,000 point armies. They were preparing for a GT, a doubles event, and all I had was my ogres, and like it was the ogres that won Shiloh. So like it's a pretty good list. And he's like, well, do you want to? Will you play us and give us a demo, or not really a demo, but like give us a warm up match? And I'm thinking like in my head, like I really should not be playing these guys, because like it's gonna only end one way, and they're gonna be pissed off.
Right.
So it exactly happened what you thought would happen. Like they were 1,000 Nightstalkers against 1,000 points of halflings, and they had very little that could punch Nightstalkers, that could punch Siegebreakers. And it ended very badly. And they were, the one partner who hadn't played very much was like, oh, this game sucks, blah, 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 blah. I was like, yeah, I mean, I should have known that going in, but I didn't have any other models. So maybe I should have played them as warriors, right? In retrospect, you can always downgrade. You can always downgrade.
Maybe that was the play, probably, Rob. Yeah, and Siegebreakers I think they are one of the roughest units in the games for new players because of the big shield defense 6. That
or Whites or Soul Reaver. Soul Reaver infantry are just 25 attacks hitting on 5s to crush 2. It's just like they're blenders at that point.
Yeah.
You learn though. We all make mistakes, and I'm sure over the course of my existence I have screwed up many a demo. And I hope, but my only hope is that I've done more demos better than screwed up. Right? Yeah, that's the hope. Is that this means the balance is in my favor.
But I think last month I did the same thing with my Deadzone demos. The first game I was deliberately a little bit stupid, just a little bit casual with my positioning, and got my leader shot off on turn 2, and it was just playing as I wouldn't play normally. And my friend's a good, very very smart guy. He's a gamer. So in the second game I was like, okay, I'll play properly. But then I went too far the other way, and it was quite a big win. Whereas, honestly, I should have just been somewhere in the middle, right?
Just play it, right? And just explain what you're doing. And, even if they lose the demo, if you show them why it's fun, show them where the strategy lies, that's what you're trying to do. You're just trying to showcase the game. It's not really about winning and losing. At least I never go into a game thinking, man, this demo, I'm gonna blow these guys out of the water. I've never played it before, but I'm an idiot savant, and I'm gonna crush these fools. No, like that's not how most people enter a demo, right? They're there to learn the game and to see if it's right for them. And
exactly. And if you're giving the demo, surely your motivation is, I'm here to grow the community. That's why I'm taking time out to try and get new players in, and
Yeah, and if even if it's not a demo, even if it's like I'm playing with new players that know the game, you're there to get them good. Ben Curry, you said it before, get good, scrub. Like that Bad Dice podcast, Ben was always like, you get good by playing, right? You get good by playing good players. So, you can play, but you don't have to crush them, right? You want to develop them. You want to bring them along. You want to, and the hope is that it's an Obi-Wan Kenobi situation where, well, I mean, Vader does kill Obi-Wan eventually. So I guess Vader.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. If you weren't around since the 70s, right? Like, Vader does eventually kill Obi-Wan. So hopefully the apprentice becomes the master at some point, and then you can learn something from them.
Exactly right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, fantastic. Cool. So I'm going to take us along. If anyone's noticed, Clem hasn't spoken in a little while. He had to take his dog out, and that's not a euphemism. So he'll be back.
He had to walk his dog.
Yeah. But to be fair, I'm not sure he could get a word in edgeways with us anyway. So
no,
it's fine.
We're going to interrupt.
He's sitting there frustrated. It's fine.
He's probably he's so polite. Like exactly. If you're at the table and there's a big chicken there, get in there, or you're going to go hungry, right? Like you're going to go hungry. They're not going to hold you the piece of chicken because you're cool. You got might makes right.
we had something similar at the when we went to the GT in Germany. Was we went to quite a nice Chinese restaurant, just the two of us, and we had this kind of like big sharing platter. And I'm super greedy, right? So basically I ate my half, and then I was sort of looking at his half, going, "Oh, come on, Clem."
That's funny.
Cool. So Armada, I think Clem's actually painted up his Basileans. So he's finished off, I think, 100 points of that. So he's getting there to play a game. I'm with you, I think, Rob. I think Armada is a great game, and I think in terms of like hobby and 3D printing, I think it's brilliant. I must admit, painting, building and painting the models was a pain in the bum for me, and it's a few people have said that, but now they're done, they do look really good.
It's the same thing I like with Vanguard. I like the card mechanics that they have, where the ships come with cards and have all the stats on a card. You sort of have a dashboard that goes on.
I don't like an app. I like.
Yeah, you have like a tableau on the table. Here we go. Show me my stats. How much health do I have? What's my nerve? Whatever. I like it, and the fact that you got to buy the models to get the cards. Boohoo! Sorry. The game's not that expensive. I mean, you buy a $40 box and a book and you're in. So
absolutely right. Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, and the new Northern Alliance stuff has been teased. That looks really good. I think the flyers look really cool.
Yeah, and why not buy a faction that can give you 2 armies? I mean, that's great. Paint 1 set of boats, and now you've got 2 factions. Great.
Is it Varangar? I guess is the second.
Varangar or Northern Alliance, right? So you get both cards. So yeah, I mean that's awesome.
That's really cool. Yeah. I hope Armada carries on a long time. I'll have to organise another game soon because I've only played it a handful of times, but I really enjoyed it every time I did. The catch the Kraken or whatever it is. It's great fun, right? It's really funny when you crash into the Kraken or an island or. Yeah,
we're gonna be playing it at Friday night at Kings of Memphis, and I built a bunch of terrain for it, so I'm super excited and we've got Warlord Games who obviously wrote Black Seas, which is what Armada is based on, has a great collection of like sea monsters and terrain.
They look awesome. Yeah.
So I bought the box, and they literally have a Kraken in there, and it's like, dude, this is gonna be fantastic. I can't wait. So and we got Kyle Presolinsky joining us for the weekend at Kings of Memphis. So I'm super excited just to play Mantic games with Mantic people and Mantic fans, and so it's gonna be awesome. Anyways, Armada's great. If you haven't played it, you should.
That's so at the GT in Cardiff, where they actually teased the Riftforged Orcs, and Carl was there, and they gave a presentation, and I'll be honest, it wasn't the greatest presentation you've ever seen. And I did go up to Kyle and say, Kyle, like, you are the most charismatic man in the world. Why don't they have you giving this presentation? But it's the point, right? Like, Kyle was literally sitting there watching it. It's like, oh, come on, please use people for what their skill sets are.
I mean, Rob Berman is another one that gives a terrific presentation.
Yeah.
It's to your point. If you have a strength, lean into it, right?
Exactly.
If you got someone that can sell, I don't know the euphemism, but there's probably a store,
ice to Eskimos.
Yeah, there you go. Then let them do it, right? Like, let them do it,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, completely so. So that's Armada. Rob, have you got anything else to say about Armada?
No, I mean, play it if you haven't. I think, whether you want to go the Kingdoms of Men route and buy the black sales models, do know you got to buy bases. That's totally fine. Or if you want to go with one of the Mantic, I'm air quoting, armies, however you get into it, play it. I think you'll enjoy it. It's not a huge time commitment.
Well, it's not a huge size commitment.
Yeah, I mean, you got to put the models together, right? You got to paint the boats and stuff. But like once you get that stuff done, you have an army, you have a fleet, and you can play. Yeah, 100%. And there's opportunity there for Vanguard and Armada and Kings of War to play amongst it. To have that. Hey, we started with Armada drops off that elite skirmishing force, and then you have a Vanguard campaign game, and then it turns into a bigger battle. I mean, there's lots of opportunities for cross pollinating between those games.
100%. And I still love the idea of there's a game of Armada going on. There's an island. It's that like in a Star Wars film. There's the space battle. With spaceships. Then you've got the kind of like battle on the planet. Then you've got the lightsaber duel all going on at the same time, and they cut
exactly
three.
And they can all be connected.
I love the idea that exactly. You've got all this happening at once. Would be super super cool. I still haven't played Vanguard though, Rob. I still haven't. I've got the
Vanguard isn't. I mean, I know Clement's probably got a strong opinion on it too. It's an acquired taste. A lot of our folks that play Kings of War locally don't like Vanguard. It's too crunchy. But flip side is we've got people that don't really like Kings of War. They don't like the big scale. They like Vanguard because it's crunchy and doesn't require as many models. So I don't know. To each their own. I think
right. Because Clem's positive on Vanguard.
Love it.
I find jarring is just it's more complicated than the mass battle game, which in my brain
it's weird. It doesn't make sense logically, right?
Exactly. Sorry, Clem.
I think the main thing with Vanguard is you should not think of it as Kings of War skirmish because this is absolutely not what it is. And
exactly right. It teaches Panathor, teaches the races, but other than that, mechanically, it's not teaching you the game.
Right.
Yeah,
it's not Kings of War light.
Keywords are slightly different, but similar. And otherwise, it's completely different. I seriously love this game. I haven't played in a very long time. Basically, we had a super big narrative campaign summer of 19, and we played a bunch for that. And after we all were like, okay, we've played Vanguard now. Let's set it aside for a while, do something else. And then 20 arrived, and then we didn't play, and we haven't really got back to it yet. But we do have a few players here who love Vanguard, but won't touch Kings of War with a 10-foot pole. And the other way around, like most Kings of War players are like, why would I? No, it has nothing to do with Kings of War.
Well, a game of Vanguard takes the same amount of time as a game of Kings of War, right? And that's the thing, right? Like they think of it like, well, it's skirmish, it should be faster. Well, if you go into thinking like that, you're going to be disappointed because it's not. It's there's a lot of tactical depth there that requires thinking and time and stuff. It's an investment.
I think so. That's what I said last time, right? Like for me, Firefight is taking one of the best elements from Kings of War and one of the best elements from Vanguard, namely the terrain interaction from Kings of War and the command dice, like how you do
Vanguard
is from Vanguard. And I think those are really two extremely strong, extremely interesting mechanics.
I get everything you guys have said. Has Vanguard been successful enough for Mantic, do we think, to kind of support?
I don't know. It's hard to say. Like local, here's the thing. Locally, we have people that play it, but it certainly doesn't have the upside that Deadzone has or Kings of War has. That being said, though, we might be a group of people that just we're not the right fit, right? Like collectively overall, we might not be the right group of people. I mean, before the new edition came out, I would call Vanguard frustrating because like it was a game of I knock you down and you get back up, right? It's like, damn it, will you freaking die?
You're about that. That does sound irritating when the song just keeps getting.
But it's gotten a little better, and I think they fixed some of the problems with some of the scenarios. So, but at the end of the day, it's I don't know. I mean, if you're asking, has it been a commercial success? It's hard to say, right? They're still supporting it. But they haven't put anything new out lately, so I don't know if it's just too many fires. I think
there's too much stuff going on for them at the same time, and I think they still put out a ton of miniatures that are now used in Kings of War. They also were released as Vanguard stuff, like boosters from Vanguard factions,
Dam busters.
Yeah, all those things have ended up in Kings of War armies, and so I think they sold like Vanguard kits pretty well, but is it for Vanguard? I'm not 100%
Right.
sure.
Good question.
And then I think maybe now they're kind of digesting the feedback from this rule set and trying to come up with, okay, where do they want to take this game next? Because I think another criticism that I've heard a lot is people were expecting Deadzone, but fantasy. And my limited understanding of Deadzone is this is not Deadzone fantasy. This is much more crunchier.
Well, yeah, Deadzone is a beautiful game design, but it's much harder to make that game
in fantasy. Probably.
In fantasy, I would think. I don't know.
Right, other people have said this on Facebook, right? Can you explain to me why that is? Why is it different?
Well, Deadzone's what, 2x2? It's
2x2. Yeah.
And Vanguard is 3x3 because you need more room, I guess.
Why?
Because it's again about moving and like interactions of auras, and it's a melee game, right? It's a fantasy game, so there's not so much shooting. So
well, I think it comes down to too is that in Deadzone a lot of your movement is vertical, right? But in a fantasy game, like where are you going to climb? You're going to climb the top of the windmill? I mean, where are you going to go? Like there's not like this preponderance of just tons of terrain.
In my brain, because I think of Legolas, like jumping all over the place, crazy parkour, because I think of that because a lot of people have said, in fantasy, you're not going to get a dwarf climbing up a tower. Well, why not?
You could, right? You could, and maybe, if you're asking me, could you do a fantasy version of Deadzone? You probably could, but it would be a different game than what we have today with Vanguard.
It would,
right?
It'd be a completely different game. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, then it takes specific terrain, and then you need to think about what are the scenarios. I mean, in the end, I think it's all about what is the experience when you play the game, right? And so maybe I think the expectation from a lot of people were slightly different. Like they wanted more like a skirmish, faster than the games of Kings of War. Like, okay, between two games of Kings of War or very quickly before a game, play a quick skirmish with just a few heroes and something like this.
But again, we're back to that. It's a good game that wasn't necessarily the game a lot of players were expecting.
Here's a good thought exercise. If they made the game for Kings of War players, I think, right? Hence the reason why they have a tape measure and it's not squares that you count. But maybe if you think back on it, maybe the better play would have been to make it for the Deadzone players. Hey, here's fancy Deadzone. And if they did it that way, maybe you do end up with squares and you do end up with towers that have. But it's a completely different game at that point. Yeah. So which is better?
It's interesting.
They're different.
And to be fair, you probably don't know until hindsight, right? Because it dropped at almost the same time that Warcry for GW dropped, and I didn't get involved in that, and it sounded quite simple to me. But that's been really, really successful. But they're completely different games, right?
I think it's successful, but it's shallow, right? Like I don't know many people who play Warcry extensively. It's like when you don't have that much time to play, or you only have a limited amount of miniatures. Like I love Warcry; it's a really great game, and I think Vanguard could be Warcry except in Panithor. That work, right?
You just have to strip it down.
Exactly, but it's something. It's not just stripped down, right? It's also you play it on a kitchen table. That makes huge difference. Huge difference. You don't have to set up a full 3x3, tons of terrain. Just take smaller boards, and it's on the coffee table, like or lunch break or after work stuff, whatever. Like a very quick game. You can learn how to play it while you play it. This is not the case with Vanguard. And so I think there is a space for Vanguard. Maybe even make it a little bit more role-play, like have super advanced scenarios for super fluffy things, like cool actions that you could do.
I think Clement, you're like circling around. Here's what I would say. Vanguard, it's not the most balanced game, and there are factions that have better opportunities in certain scenarios. I think if you have people that have the right mindset, that are more into the narrative side of things, Vanguard is an awesome game. Like from a narrative perspective, you can do some really crazy stuff, right? Like you can write your own scenarios, you can have asymmetric play.
But if you speed 4 in some certain scenarios, you're going to have a bad time.
Yeah, so like we had some power gamers that joined us and almost killed the game for us because they're like, look at this rule, I can break this. It's like, which you always do in a first edition.
Get back to your 40k.
Yeah. Or go play Infinity or whatever else you're playing, right? Like, great.
Yeah. I broke it.
Yeah. I don't know. I still love Vanguard, and I love Vanguard for two reasons. One, the command dice I think is brilliant, but also the fact that I don't even need easy army. I have a deck of cards. We're playing 200 points. Cool. Boom, 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 boom. Lay it out.
I really like that.
And it's like, oh, that's so awesome.
I really like that, and I appreciate probably the app. Having stuff in an app is probably actually better because you can update it. But I still just like the cards. Yeah, right. If that can of worms wasn't quite big enough, we'll have to move on to our next segment, which is the topic of the month.
Yeah.
And the topic of the month is, however you want to phrase this, what changes would we like to see in Kings of War? And as we've been talking, I'll just throw this out there, which is kind of related. Do you know what would be cool is if they had Mantic offered like either a Basilian or a kind of table themed terrain all in one box. So like enough for a 6x4 table, so you could have like a Basilian themed box, which has got like a couple of awesome Basilian churches and hills and kind of like a theme.
That'd be awesome.
Box. Yeah, I'd buy that. Clem, would you spend money on that?
I think I would buy STLs for that. I mean, they just
right. Oh, there you go. Yeah. Good point. That's
STLs, and
there you go. There you go.
Put the stamp of approval on some creators that do cool stuff for terrain. And boom, that's it. And then you will have people who manufacture it for you if you want it. Or if they think they find something they really like, maybe they can send it in their factory and have it boxed in starter sets, whatever. But I think a lot of this stuff, Mantic could play a role, kind of a organizer of all of those things, right? And
just behind us on this.
Yeah, I mean, STLs, right, in 3D printing, it's disruptive. It's changing, and with Kings of War, it's a figure agnostic game. Firefight's not figure agnostic. It says right in the book, play with your Mantic models, right? Yeah. Like, so it's sort of it would be interesting. You mentioned like a Basilean army, which is kind of got like a Byzantine or Constantinople theme.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's probably like somebody that already makes models like that. If they could just partner with somebody, right? I like making terrain. But I also can appreciate a 3D printed piece of terrain, or God forbid, a plastic injection. I mean, my eyes light up when people are like, when you print or when you actually have a plastic injection molded piece of terrain, like some of the stuff that Renendra's made, or and look, GW gets enough knocks, but the cost notwithstanding, they make some cool stuff.
They do,
right?
They do.
And it's like, man, I was looking at the trees. I know it's expensive, but like they have like a wildwood set. These trees are like obnoxiously big and obnoxiously cool and just totally awesome, and like would make.
And that's an old kit as well, but it's just so iconic. But I do think as well that would help Kings of War, kind of like, we know that's a Basilian church, or like I feel like if they had Kings of War terrain, it would kind of ground things more. Like I don't know, just in my brain.
It feels like what you're saying, and I'm gonna put words in your. I love putting words in people's mouths, so I'll do it.
Go for it.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we need more of is we need more thematic play. We need more storytelling. We need more background.
Right. So this is my next idea.
Yeah.
You've just led into it beautifully. I think there should just be a narrative, asymmetric play book, like a supplement that just comes out. Tournaments, it's got special characters in it. It's not supposed to be balanced. It's all theme. It's all story. It's, asymmetric battles, besieging fortresses, capture the giant,
absolutely,
capture the egg.
All of
that stuff.
Fun.
Super
play.
themey. Fun.
It's for fun.
Themey, exactly. Just super, because I think a lot of the people who, a lot of the negative feedback about Kings of War, which I think is actually, I don't necessarily agree with, is that there isn't that level of kind of theme and detail and story.
Well, it'll come, right? A lot of people level that criticism in the fact that, we don't have 50 or 30 years experience, of writing Black Library books. Yeah, I get that. We'll get there. But, one of my contentions recently has been like, we don't spend, as a community and as Mantic, we don't put enough effort into the casual play. Look, the rule set is perfectly suited for casual play. It's a simple rule set that's easy to learn, right? Yeah. It doesn't have to be a lifestyle game, right? It just happens to be also an awesome tournament game, which is great. But like, we need to give them more. They did this with Destiny Kings. It was great. there's a bunch of linked battles, and they were asymmetric, and they were bonkers, and they were completely unbalanced, but they're fun. Right. And that's sometimes we lose sight of that. Like, we strip things down. Oh, is it competitive? Are we min-maxing? How about if it's just something that's fun?
Right. And if you did it in a separate, a new supplement book, people can pick and choose. Do they want to play like that or not? So it's not hurting anyone that wants to play super competitive, right? Min-maxing stuff. It's there if you want it. If you don't, that's okay. And Mantic can quite easily see how well that book sells, that supplement sells, and pivot accordingly. What's the demand like? Yeah.
So what's in this book, right? Scenarios, like new scenarios, weird units, or what is it? Or also a bunch of fluff.
Historical battles.
Yep.
Like recommendations.
That's a good point. Battles. Historical battles. Yeah. I mean, siege rules. We haven't had siege rules since 2019, right? Like that's when they had them in 2019, and they need to be updated. And look, let's be honest. There's nothing wrong with the siege rules, but if you took it seriously, those siege rules sucked. We had a competitive guy show up with hammer and measured force and was like, "Look, I wound these wolves on 4s, bro. That's what the rules are, right? Right? But in the spirit of the game, like that's totally obnoxious.
Yeah.
I hit you on 3s and I wound you on 4s. I don't care if I'm your defense 10. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
But I think the bones for a really great siege is there, and I will even say they may be the best siege rules of any fantasy mass battle game I've ever seen. Like I've done Blood in the Badlands, I've done all the General's Compendium, Warhammer World. I mean, but those Matt James and company did a hell of a job, and the bones are there. Like putting whole units on it, you just have to be. You just have to be cognizant of the terrain you actually use. You need to have special terrain, like that can actually hold units on the walls, right?
But then we're back to Mantic could offer STLs. And I'm sure Clem's right. There's so many really talented people in the world. There's a guy in Ireland who does Corvus Terrain. They're just normal guys like us who are very talented in this. Right?
But I bought lots and lots of stuff for my Legion table from them. Right, like they're amazing.
Right. And I just think, if Mantic reached out to one of these guys, they'll get someone to say,
or even if it's MDF, like I don't care,
exactly, right? Or MDF, exactly, right? Which is really good and really cost effective.
But I think the point we're making here is we need more focus on non-competitive gaming, because it's not all about winning and losing. Sometimes it's just there to have fun, and that's okay too. And you know what? There's lots of people that don't. We talked about the stigma of, well, I don't want to go to a tournament. I get kind of where those people are coming from. Historically, they may have played fantasy or 40K or some other, or maybe they even had a bad experience with Kings of War. That's possible, right? Like,
it's possible.
But like that, I would tell everybody, come to a tournament. You're going to have a good time. Having a bad time is probably the exception, not the rule. But let's do, and also we toyed around with this idea, like, why not have an event that is focused on narrative play? COVID hit us at the wrong time, but we were all geared to having like Armada, Vanguard. Well, actually, Armada wasn't out, so we were going to write our own rules for the Armada piece. But now that Armada's out, like, okay, Armada shows up, and the winner has dropped off their elite faction or their Black Ops to go and scour the battlefield, and that's going to give and it's going to give some advantage to the Kings of War army, in a pitched battle the next day. Or maybe you're going to get a tower, or maybe the army found a stow of guns. I don't know.
Yeah. But
the sky's the limit. But the point is, we need more of that stuff, because that's where the passion comes from.
100%.
Competitive play does not bring passion.
It's a different thing, right? Like narrative, it's obvious to say it, but I think it needs to be said. It's about telling a story, right? Yeah. And in the end, it's not, are you winning this game or losing this game? No, it's you are telling a super cool story and having a great time. I mean, I know this from, for example, Necromunda, one of my other favorite games. I mean, I like when my fighters die a horrible death, right? Like they catch fire and then they run off a cliff and then they fall onto another one of my fighters and then it explodes. And I lose
the rest of your life. Yeah.
Exactly. But then you remember what happened. And I think it's maybe it's kind of this soul, this telling a story that is missing a bit in some King of War games.
But also, Sorry, buddy. Sorry I interrupted you.
Oh,
But
oh.
also, if you can attract these people who are kind of like, well, Kings of War looks cool, but it's so competitive. I just want to do my narrative stuff. If you can kind of meet them halfway, I kind of feel like it's way more likely in the future that you'll get them to tournaments because they'll realize, hey, this is, just get them through the doors,
Another legitimate criticism is that for the sake of balance, we've blanded the game down a little bit, right? Like a lot of things are similar because we want it to be balanced.
Yeah.
Well, let's have an opportunity where it doesn't have to be balanced. We don't give a crap. You're going to bring like crazy ass hammer and you're going to throw it across the battlefield. You're going to decapitate just crazy stuff.
Exactly.
And so we need more of that. People say that there's not enough background. Like write your own background, or like let's have a book that comes out that's going to make you write your own story. Right. And
I don't want to have novels, right? Like I don't want to read tons and tons of novels. What I want is something that supports my game, so that whenever I play the game, like I see something more than just the plastic toys on the table. Like I really tell a nice story. And this comes not from having like hundreds of novels or like super thick books. It's from having the right incentive into, okay, why is this battle happening? What's the scenario and how we get from there? But yeah, I think it was to do it.
And there's precedent. Destiny King sort of did that. We just need more of it. So
just moving it along. So next point I wanted to make was actually the whole kind of good neutral.
It's garbage. Let's just cut to the chase. Yeah. The whole thing is garbage, and it's only there because they have allies. Just drop the allies thing. I mean, come on. Allies are for suckers.
That takes me on to my next point where I write, I hate allies.
Right. I mean, you say it best, right? Allies are there to fill a hole. Well, that's naturally when you have interesting armies, they're not good at everything. They're not all Superman, right? Like they have a deficiency, and maybe it's a deficiency to shooting. Maybe it's a deficiency
good at the game is learning how to counter that.
Yeah.
Within what you have.
Play with the tools you have. You don't have all the tools.
Yeah. So my incredibly themey ice elementals, okay, well I don't want them anymore. I want my incredibly themey glade stalkers, right? It's like,
Icekin Hunters, another broken unit. Yeah.
Hunters, which one?
The Icekin Hunters. The Icekin Archer guys. They're pretty Northern Alliance. They're pretty good, right? So I don't know. I get like from a sales perspective, I get allies. Like, hey, you've got this army and you want to slowly transition to a different army. You can kind of bring in reinforcements. I get that.
Yeah, then do it in narrative, right?
Yeah, exactly. You can make it a narrative thing. Exactly.
Right. That's it, guys. That's the solution. You don't get it. You don't get rid of it completely. You put it in the narrative book, and the tournament can say yes or no. Will they allow the?
It's the same thing with wonky characters. Like if they want to let them in, they can let them in, right? Like.
Yeah, exactly.
I think also for me the issue I have with evil, good, and neutral is how many lists in Kings of War? Like 27, 28?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean much to me, right? Like what does good
a lot of them are exactly the same. They're very samey, right? Like they're.
So maybe if it was a bit more, okay, here is basically the story going on in the universe, and these factions are more on this side, and then okay, it kind of helps me build my story, right? Yeah. Okay, this army I can build it maybe or one army could be good or neutral or even bad, right? Depending on what they choose toward the world existing. But to tell me that elves are good, okay, great. I mean, I know that somehow doesn't bring much to my game in a way.
They just need to restore their they were a bold company. Right when they threw the Brotherhood into the abyss and was like they're dead, like they're gone, like that was the kind of shit I was like, okay, let's do more of this, right? I was like, that's some storytelling right there. That's compelling, and so they just need to find their way back to that where they they're willing to kill their downlings or kill like their pretty army, and they probably didn't take the Brotherhood remnants of the Brotherhood far enough. But like that when they initially did it, like okay, that army is like disenfranchised. It's mostly dead. They're finding their way. Okay, it makes perfect sense that some of them may have found their ways to the forces of nature, and some found their way to the Basilean.
Basileans, right?
So like I get that, more of that. Do more of that.
Yeah. And maybe, Rob, can we not tie this in with, like the Magnetar campaign with Deadzone, right? Can we not have a global campaign where,
Sure.
stuff is going to happen where,
well, and to their credit, they've done that in the like Helpy's Rift and stuff. They've done that in the past where like parts of the map have actually physically changed based on the results. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is they've done a lot of the stuff we're telling them to do.
Right.
They need more of it.
These are not new ideas.
They just need to do more of it.
Yeah.
They, and I think here's the problem. They're not listening. This may be crazy. They're not listening to Rob Berman enough because that dude's nuts, and he's just nuts enough to do what we need to have done. So listen to Rob more.
Fantastic.
6 months from now, I maybe ruined the day that I said that, but I stand by. I stand by it. He's a mad scientist.
No, I think he loves goblins, right? He loves goblins. Yeah.
He'll kill them off just as fast as he creates them, right? Like.
Oh right.
Yeah.
And while we're in it, I can't remember how many it is now. Is it 28 armies? And I mean, it made sense, right? When Kings of War started, you're trying to lure fantasy players into the game, right? So it makes sense to have an army that everyone can just plug their army straight in, no problem, and you're playing Kings of War. That obviously makes an awful lot of sense. But and we keep going on about it, and there's that constant tension how big a company is Mantic. It's a pretty small company, but they're trying to support all of this stuff. And, it's not just, putting out a new army. It's the ongoing support of how we're building all these models, right? And 28 just feels too... Yeah,
it does feel like that.
Which is cool, but
on one hand, like you could argue that they're not really supporting all the armies, like Herd. They're not making. They have werewolves, but they're not making most of those models.
The rules committee are coming out with rules.
So the effort is on the balancing side, right? Which the more armies you have, the harder it is to balance. And also, I think the more armies you add, the more samey they get. Like they become kind of like cookie cutters, only with one change. So I don't know. There's not a good answer here, right? Like on one hand, people are going to be mad if you kill off their army, and on the other hand, the more armies we have, the more people are going to be able to level. Well, the armies are all the same, or there's not a lot of different. Because you got 29. I mean, you have more armies than you have 40K. I mean, that's saying something. You have more armies than you have in AOS or any other rule. I don't know any other rule set that has pushing 30. I mean, and let's not even talk about the historical armies. But pushing 30 armies is a lot. So I don't know the answer.
To be honest,
some consolidation.
I'm not sure it's really an issue for me, right? Like, sure, it adds some question of balance and a question of, okay, is this list really necessary because it's very similar to that other list? But at the same time, if it allows someone to kind of project, okay, I found those super cool models and I want to use them in Kings of War. Where do I throw them in? Okay, now they're not forces of nature, they're Herd or whatever, or they're not just the Ratkin slaves or something like this. And it helps players give a different twist.
So,
I don't know.
If I play devil's advocate then, so let's say Deadzone, right? There's 10 factions. I don't feel like, oh God, I wish there was more factions, right? 10 feels enough. So let's say Kings of War, let's say Mantic overnight, they cut it down to, let's say, 12 factions, right? And just cut it in half, more than half. If they just focused on the ones that are strong Mantic IPs like Northern Alliance, Nightstalkers, the Riftforge Orcs, Basileans, right?
Any of the newer stuff, EOD, right? Now.
Exactly, EOD definitely. And then they put their limited resources into really supporting those 12 factions. And maybe you could say, look, we'll keep coming up with rules for the other factions for a period. But I mean, ultimately, at some point, the Warhammer fantasy players that they sucked in 10 years ago, at some point they should be buying a Mantic army, maybe, right?
I mean that's true, but also like this isn't Warhammer. Like you bet it came into it because you played Warhammer, but what you'll really quickly find out is that there's more differences between Kings of War and Warhammer Fantasy than similarities. Oh yes, we have ranks and flanks.
Yeah,
we have a D6.
Inches,
and we're based in centimeters, right? Based metrically, yeah. I mean, like literally, like there's very little the same, and I think to your point, maybe that's what they do is they soft kill stuff, right? Like in other words, they just stop. The Uncharted, they move from Uncharted Empires to the main rule book, anything they want to Manticify, and then slowly that book eventually goes away down the road. Do we need I know I'm going to get hate mail, but do we need Roria? If we got Kingdoms of Men,
Exactly.
they're very similar, right?
Yeah.
Oh, one's got whatever they call it, volley guns, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'm happy with merging some stuff, but I think also to get back to what you said earlier, also Chris, to help them focus a bit on factions. I think those things are not mutually exclusive, right? You could keep 28 armies and just focus on the ranges that you have actual miniatures for.
Sure.
Right? And make sure that you release interesting miniatures for those.
Let's be honest. If someone from Mantic is listening, they'll probably say, "Yeah, that's exactly what we do right now. That's literally what we do. We've got rules for the herd, but we're not putting any resources. It's rules committee coming up.
It's like nature in general, right? Like they have a forces of nature army, but like there's a lot of armies that are salamanders, trident realms, herd. They're all kind of similar but different.
Yeah.
Right. And so I don't know. This is not a discussion that's ever going to end.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, we're no closer.
And it's only going to get worse because at some point we're going to have Ophidians, right? At some point, we'll have to have Ophidians because to all these people that are asking for more lore, there is lore there. We just need to see it manifested in the game at some point. And maybe it takes, to your point, maybe it takes another narrative global campaign over the summer where maybe we lose another army like a la Brotherhood, or maybe Imperial Dwarves finally conquer the Fear Dwarves and that's it. They're done.
That would be interesting.
Right? Maybe, and Mantic's a bold company, man. They've done some crazy stuff before. They'll do some crazy stuff again, especially if you listen to Rob. Rob for president. No, I don't. Go ahead.
Sorry, Rob. So just moving things along. So I haven't thought this through at all. So, and I really probably think this wouldn't be a good idea. But what happens if Kings of War changed to an alternating activation?
It wouldn't work. Yeah, I think the game ceases to exist as a. You would almost need to replace it with a different game, because it's not just one unit, right? It's the combination of units acting in tandem simultaneously,
yes.
Right? And so where I'm going with this is you've noticed other games in their systems have alternating activations. I think that's to scratch that itch. So Firefight has it, Vanguard has it, Deadzone
has it.
Yeah. So Kings of War is a holdover to an older time, and I think there's nostalgia at play here. And I just think I don't ever see them going away from that unless they literally are killing it and bringing out something new.
I mean, for me, there's no need to go alternate activations, right? Like some people say, oh, we need this in 40K, for example, and it comes from somewhere, right? Because from what I understand, if you're unlucky, by the end of your turn one, like when you start your turn one, like a third of your army or half of your army is already off the table.
Yeah.
Then it's super frustrating. You're like, oh, if only I could alternate activations, and then I can do something about it, and then the game can be lousy.
But by suggesting that, I'm solving a problem that doesn't exist.
Exactly. I don't think anybody's asking for that.
No, it's me literally going, oh, how could we, after Rob's suggestion for topic.
I'm a bad person. I always ask. Controversial.
Yeah, what can
You're going to be like, it's like, I'm like the Countercharge is like the Captain Kirk, like from this universe, and you guys are the Captain Kirk with the goatee that comes out of the,
like the much less
the bad Captain Kirk.
Goatee. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You can just imagine them doing that. They're going, how will we know how will the audience know which is which? Oh, well, he's going to have a little goatee.
Obviously, you got a goatee, you're a bad person. You're evil.
Looking, yeah, exactly, an evil-looking goatee. Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so you guys shot me down pretty well on that. That's fair enough. Yeah. So Rob, that's my next suggestion, which we're tentatively calling outrun mode, right? So this idea, Rob, I think you'll like it. So both sides start with 15 minutes on the clock, and as you kill stuff, you get more time added to your clock. The first person to clock out loses.
But it's just a different way to play, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. And then
I had this idea while I was cooking yesterday. It just literally came out of nowhere.
Well, it's not just not totally out of the realm of like, you know, speed clocks games, right? Where they have those clocks that I just played one on Friday night at Bug Eater. Super fun, right? Goes back to that narrative play, right? Like the world is being destroyed by some supernatural force.
Right, exactly. Something's coming out of the abyss, an unstoppable
and
thing.
pulling units away, and you're running out of time. And I love it.
Maybe you have a wizard who's got to be at a shrine and he's got to perform a spell to delay the end of the Cthulhu monster coming out of the abyss or whatever. Yeah.
So when I read Outrun mode, I was thinking more like Super Mario, like kart, like the makeup mechanic. Like, oh, I got the blue shell now, I'm going to catch up, right? Like, but you're actually talking about something quite different, which is, as you kill stuff, you get more time. I think that's cool, and there's nothing wrong with that, of having different win conditions.
I think an interesting aspect of this for me is add some wacky mechanics, right? And I think to some extent the Halpi's Rift, it added a tiny bit of it, like super mild. Like it was still in a way I think pretty balanced, but it still added some taste to the games. And I think they can do this. Just turn it to 11, right? Like make
narrative. Yeah, with narrative play, there's no rules, right? Like you don't have to worry about becoming less deterministic. That's the point of narrative play. Like we're going to do things on its head, and it's fun.
Yeah, absolutely. But I guess it's just having like-minded people that we all understand. We're here to have fun. This is not perfect. We're not playing chess. This is
telecourse.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. And I've got to be honest. I love playing doubles games. I love doing doubles.
Doubles are fun.
I wish
doubles are a lot of fun, and we've run one here locally. It's a lot of fun. There's a couple popped up. We have a couple doubles events in the U.S. And for those that have heard us like, hey, you should go to a tournament. If you really want a unfrightening way to go to a tournament, go to a doubles event. Go with a veteran.
Go with a buddy.
Play with a person that's been there before. It's not their first rodeo. They will literally hold your hand through the whole thing, and you will have an amazing time. And in fact, we're talking about all this narrative stuff. Doubles events opens it up. So like in our doubles event, Blue Seated Brawl, like when we started, each person would bring the king, their king, and their king could then do things to their armies. And we allowed them to break the rules of the game. Like, oh, you have you have like non-surgical units, and then you had so you could do things that you never would expect, right? Because this unit has these two units shouldn't be in the same army, but now they are. And so there's things that you couldn't do other than, and you're playing 1,000 points. It limits some of the pain. Limits how much craziness you really could bring to the table. But it's a host of fun. And doubles events would be great if maybe we formalize some of the rules. Like maybe there are a special set of rules for doubles, right? Like maybe, you talked about allies. Maybe there's not allies rules, but there's doubles rules. And that allows you to break some of the, like, okay, you can inspire your teammates. You can, like at our event, you can inspire each other as long as you weren't evil and good. Like if you weren't opposite. Now, I know you hate the whole evil mechanic and stuff, which I do too, but it's only there for
But that's
allies.
a cool, working with what we have, that makes a lot of sense. Because it doesn't make sense that an abyssal can inspire an elf or a Basilian. It just doesn't make sense, right? Thematically. Yeah. Cool. Rob, any other? Well, the only
one I'd probably talk about is, we got a new rule called Withdraw in 3rd edition, and it's the only rule we have questions about. Like withdrawing and what's disengaging. So I just hope that Mantic looks at it and cleans it up, because it's like that's the only time we really like. And, they've had to have FAQ after FAQ. Oh, well, now when you disengage, you can't at the double. You can't. It's like, okay, guys, you're fixing a problem that didn't really exist, which is the bounce back rule. Just stay engaged. I don't give a shit. Like, just stay engaged. Like,
I think they've improved the wording a lot with the latest FAQ, so that really helps a lot. For me, it would be very helpful if I had like tons of diagrams, like, okay, here are the 6 different scenarios that you can have after a battle, right? And this kind of thing is allowed, this kind of thing is not allowed, like examples and stuff like this.
I mean, there's only 2 things, like after a battle, right? with the withdraw and stuff, you're either going to charge back in, right? Like, and continue the fight, in which case stay engaged, or you're backing up to either try to get away or fight somebody else. So like, I don't know, there's probably better ways to do those to allow you to do those two things, you know? So I don't know.
I know.
Yeah, I think it's really a question of wording and making the rule clear for everyone involved. I like that it gives some options in a way, because the game is about moving around your units, right? And so if you provide some options for, okay, after a fight, maybe I can disengage and try to go and be sneaky and charge something else, or like go hide and make space for another unit to come in charge. I think if those rules are clear for everyone involved, then it makes for a more interesting game. Maybe.
Yeah, and I know some people don't like the corkscrew, right? But I think the corkscrew at its basic level is fine. For me, I think you should lose nimble when you're disordered, period. Like right now, if it's an ensnaring unit or a phalanx unit disorders you, you lose nimble. But I just think you lose fly, you should just lose nimble. And that will clear up some of the consternation that happens from time to time.
Agreed.
I mean, really all these rules are meant to just try to like, they're trying to like gotcha moment your opponent, which is it's not counterintuitive. That's not the spirit of Kings of War. Kings of War is like, we know we know the permutations. So I don't know. Yeah, and I'm sure I pissed off like somebody that their whole game revolves around this one thing, right? And I get that, but sorry, I don't know. I don't know. Let's get into a scrum and let's fight.
We're never going to please. It's just
no. You're not. You're right.
Everybody.
You're never going to please everybody.
Right? We're going to have to say. We're going to say some things which are going to annoy people, and maybe rightly so. But such is life. And Clem, what's this about you and unique rules?
Well, it's exactly similar to what Rob was saying, right? What I love about Kings of War is there's no gotcha moment, and I want the rule sets to remain, let's say, simple enough so that I can know what to expect from a basic point of view of the rules. And I hate unique rules. Like if I don't know, like if I see a list from someone, I want to be able to understand basically what it does. Maybe I can get surprises, like strategic surprises, because they're deploying the units differently or moving them differently. But I don't want to hear, oh, by the way, I get brutal D3 or brutal 3 or whatever because I have a special aura or a special item that is unique and it only exists for this hero there. And so, I don't know, I think there's a right balance to find here. It's the same with the number of items and the number of spells. I hate it when I hear, okay, I'm going to cast this spell. Wait a second, what was this spell again? Right? Anytime I have to open my book to look something up or look at the list and read again, oh shit, what was this spell again?
You just
that's a lose.
You want to be using your brain power for just focusing on the table and understanding the tactics and what you're trying to achieve, what your opponent's trying to achieve, not getting buried in rules.
Yeah.
I love what he just said, and he triggered me on something. I hate it when you break a core rule with a new rule. So ogre regiments shouldn't unlock. Sorry, like that's in the book. Large infantry doesn't unlock for regiments. But now you've made a special rule for just one army and because only one unit.
Players complained, I guess, right?
I guess, but like I don't ever have a problem with it. But that's an example of where like now I've got to like that's one more special thing I got to remember. Oh, that's right. Ogre warlock regiments, warrior regiments unlock. Oh, okay. And I play ogres, and I'm telling you, I hate when rules break core mechanics of the game.
Right.
I hate it. I hate it with a passion because that's just more stuff I got to learn and more stuff I got to keep in here. And it's like, man, just make me a set of rules. And, and I do think maybe they need to be more creative because like back in the day, we didn't have auras. We didn't have a lot of stuff. And there's been a couple things that I liked. Wild Charge, I think is cool, right? Like, I think that's a neat mechanic.
That is a good one.
It adds a little bit more randomness to the game, but that's okay. I love it.
It feels themey as well, right?
Yeah, but now they're not creative in some cases. Now we're just gonna like we're just gonna be brutal 3. We're gonna do brutal D3. It's like, all right.
Yeah.
And then Dread doesn't stack with I mean, I'm just nitpicking here, but like Dread doesn't, and I'm nitpicking my own army, but like
nitpick away, Rob. No, please.
Dread doesn't stack with Brutal, but if you've got Kuzlo and Madfall, that's not real Dread. It's like, okay, that's too nuanced of a thing. It's either Dread or it's not, right? And it's like, just make it clear. Dread, I mean, it's not Dread. It's whatever, monster sticky, whatever the rule's called.
Yeah.
I hate, to Clement's point, I dislike very specific rules that are specific to a single models.
Yeah.
Now, you kind of argue the army-wide rules are kind of the same thing, right? Like, okay, in Kingdoms of Men, you have Indomitable Will. Some units can take that. All right, that's about where I limit. Like, okay, each army can have a special rule, but all the other rules should be accessible to anybody. Like, like Phalanx. We used to have a Phalanx magical artifact. Why did that's another thing that we're missing. We need to rotate these, man. I guess they did, right? They did take some out and they added some new ones. And like the Periscope one, that's one that we did at Blue City Brawl where you had a spell where you could change the height of your unit. So I kind of like that kind of stuff. I don't know where I'm going. I'm rambling, but my point is, don't give me a bunch of rules that are specific to an individual unit or an individual model. Just give me generic stuff. That's what Kings of War is about. It's about the generic troop. It's not about the hero, right? It's about the troops.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. Cool. Yeah, I think we've done pretty well on that. We've got, if everyone's okay for time, we've got about 20 minutes left.
Yeah.
And should we get into some listener questions?
Well, your first one you've already answered. Steve wanted to know, is there too many factions? I think we beat that horse to death already. Yeah. The answer is yes. We don't know what to do about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Our answer was yes and no, and we don't know if it's a problem, and we don't know what to do about it. So yeah. I think we've got that covered pretty well.
Yes.
We went. Yeah.
So then he asked some questions. I think we can go through pretty quickly, and then just switch to I think the more interesting one. But go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Maybe we'll move on to the second question. Thanks, Rob. Should you always go first?
Nope. Jeff O'Neill says no. You should go second. And I used to be of that mind because in a lot of scenarios you want to be the last person to move, so you get the last decision.
Exactly right.
But flip side, not all things are equal. Sometimes you're playing a herd army. I mean a shooting army, and or you're playing an aggressive army where you want to dictate the movement. Well, then in those you go first. Or you're playing loot. I want to jump on loot, and if you can move 12, I want to jump on that loot token. Right?
So I was the same as you, Rob. So I always thought, I'll go second with my Trident Realm. I avoid some shooting, and I get the last activation. But the trouble is, I wasn't getting my grindy stuff to where I needed to be. I wasn't getting past the center point, and then I don't do much damage. So I was always kind of locked out of the house, if that makes sense. And it was actually just chatting to Elliot Lorish about that, and he said, "No, go first." that's going to solve a lot.
More and more now, I always go first. But to be fair, I've been playing ogres, and that's their nature, right? Like we're going in hard, boys, and we're gonna get shot. Some of us are not making it in. So,
but there's more pay for the rest of us, right?
Yeah. That's right.
I mean, with my Nightstalkers and Wind Blasts, and so being better at moving, going second is actually sometimes a good thing, depending on the scenario.
No, your soul flares, you put them on the flank, you just keep pushing people back. Mind blast them, with their mind screeches, wind blast them back. Absolutely. Every army's different.
And Clem, when you say depends on the scenario, are there any scenarios which are steps, sort of jumping out to you that it's better to go second on? I'm
not too sure. Control, obviously.
Any movement ones. Any ones where you're moving, right? Dominate, invade. Like,
control.
You would like to be the last person. You know the score, and you get to go last.
You
get to make the final moves. So you can sometimes have your own fate. Your fate is in your own control. But go ahead, Clem, you got something?
No. I agree. I mean, that's exactly the reason why. Unless it's a turn 7, and then you're fine with it. But very often, like in the last few actions of the game, you can really like change it from a draw to win or a loss to a draw or something like this. Like when it's really on the edge, like having the last word is very powerful, I think.
Cool. So Steve's next question: why are people so obsessed with Deadzone?
It's amazing. I will honestly say Jake Thornton is a genius, and it is their best, most mechanically interesting rule set that they make.
I agree. I completely agree with that. I love lots of their games, but I completely agree with that statement. I think it's just amazing for so many reasons. Just the game design is just so good. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, I think if you're asking that question, Steve, just play it, and I think it's really obvious why it's such an amazing game and why people are obsessed with it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So next question: do you think Firefight has what it takes to win 40k players? I'm going to widen that out to other people as well, not just like
sci-fi players in general, Legion, Infinity, whatever. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I have a very clear take on this. I think Firefight is its own game, and to some extent, no. I think it's a very hard uphill battle to rope in some diehard 40k players because it is a different game. And if what you like is the list building and the lore and the miniatures of 40k, Firefight has not that much for you, right? It's something different.
Yeah.
And so I think, yes, it really has tons of super interesting elements as a sci-fi, like warband, so to speak, a game, but it is something different than 40k. And so for all of the unhappy 40k players, then yes, absolutely, it has tons to offer with the alternate activations that we mentioned, with everything is the same rules, the same rule book, and you don't have to chase the latest codex that comes out and so on. Obviously, anyone playing 40k that is unhappy about those elements of 40k will love Firefight. But then it's a different game. So
what I found quite, to be honest, depressing is just trying to get local people to play Mantic games. Is, a couple of people have said to me, if I'm honest, I know 40k is rubbish, but I'm going to stay with 40k because, the inherent advantages that 40k has got in terms of, brick and mortar shops. It's got, GW stores around the place. You'll get a game. It's going to be here in 20 years' time, probably owned by Disney. Even though, if I'm honest, I don't really enjoy this game as much as I might, I'm just going to stick with 40k, and that's quite a depressing situation to be in, maybe.
I mean, I think it's on them, right? And I think we mentioned it earlier in the show. Personally, I think I'm kind of giving up on trying to convert people because people don't like change. And so someone who says, yeah, I love 40k, and I don't see why I would try to force them to try Firefight and Firefight. No, I want to talk to other people, right? Like if someone is curious about it, like you're a tournament 40k player, and for whatever reason, the latest book is the one too many, and now you're tired of it, or you just had a kid, and now you can't spend so much time in it, and need something else. You still want to get your fix in playing sci-fi, but you can't follow what's going on with 40k or whatever. And sure, come and have a look at Firefight, and maybe it will be a better fit for you. But I don't think it's really a goal to try to replace 40k. Like it's just that's not
realistic, right?
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say, like, if you're just talking about science fiction players in general, if they're playing their current game for either the theme or their model selection, well, then they're not going to get that from, if you like Legion because you like Star Wars, or you like 40k because you like Space Marines, well, then we don't have much to offer you in that regard. So, from that standpoint, you're kind of, we're not going to win there. If you like your current game mechanically and the way it's marketed, and what I mean by that is if you like games that, like in the case of 40k, that it is a list building game, it is a chase the dragon game. Like you expect a new book every so often, and it's going to completely swing the pendulum back and forth. If you like that, if you like chasing that dragon, we don't have anything to offer you. The only place it has to offer you is that if you really just want a modern science fiction game, right, that's well balanced, and you can get past the fact that it's not a gacha game, it's not a list builder game, and it's not, it's got bare bones in terms of lore, but it's got a mechanically good game. I mean, if you think about it, in some ways, you've taken the alternating activations from Star Wars Legion, you've got the command dice from Vanguard, you've got the exploding eights from Deadzone, who took it from the Spartan games, right? You've got all these things. You've made like this Frankenstein of a really cool, mechanically good game. But if that's not what they wanted, if they don't want a clean, balanced game, then they're not going to join you. But my point is, you'll get some people. You're going to get the faithful, right? Any of the Deadzone folks are going to jump on board. I think Kings of War players who are, I think a lot of Kings of War players do like clean rule sets. They're going to be on board. Whether or not they like the sci-fi setting is our story. The question is going to be the rest of the science fiction players out there. Some of them are going to jump. Legion. If you're not into Legion because of Star Wars, well, then give this a try. Because if you're really more into like colonial marines and plague and disease and stuff, I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff there.
And also easy to get into, right? Like you buy a what are they called? Like
there's the cost thing too, right?
Yeah, like
a lot of games are super. Legion is ridiculous. Like every time you turn around, there's another box, and it's $20-$30. It's like, this is buy an army, $100, $150, whatever, and you're done for now. And you obviously, if you're like, if you have the bug like Clement, well, then he's not going to stop. He's going to keep buying Plague until he has no room in his house.
But what I mean is the barrier of entry is much lower for this scale of games. Like maybe Bolt Action is the similar level in terms of how much money and investment you need to put in before you can have a, let's say, regular game. But I think this is also a very strong advantage of Firefight compared to other. I
think out of the box, the 2-player starter, you have an army. Yes. Out of the box, you don't have a real army in Legion, right? It's I forget 800 points. It's been a while since I played Legion, but. And certainly a 2-player starter box in 40K is not a real game of 40K. It's what we talked about before in the demo game. It's something less. It's not the full experience. So is it going to be successful? I don't know. Like, I think the hard plastics are great, but so a lot of people like, Mantic models suck. Well, have you looked at them in the last 10 years? They're getting better, and a lot of their hard plastics are really nice. If you give it a chance. And look, if you got unlimited funds and you can afford the best, most boutique-ish looking cool army, cool. Or if you're only going to do 3D printed stuff, you're probably not going to, or maybe you're going to give the game a chance, but you're going to play with, non-Mantic models. Yeah, I don't know.
I think it's up to us also, like the community to, and like the early adopters and like the however you call them, like the converted or the
evangelists. Yeah, for sure. The people that are here first.
Just go around, okay, this is what an actual army with Mantic models looks like. And it actually looks really good on the table. Like maybe when you look at the pictures on the website, you don't get a good idea of what the models are like, or you just have heard 20 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever, how long ago models were not so great. And so you just stuck with this. But actually look at what I have here and give it a try, and then maybe you can convert some other people. But I think it all boils down to in local communities, like how Firefight will be played or not. Right? I think in Berlin we're quite lucky. There are like I think 6 very active people, like they are painting their armies already, like with Mantic models for Firefight, and signed up to come to our next gaming day. So I hope this will like constitute a solid basis for continued gaming here, and then we'll see if it also catches up in other locations, right? And then that's how a game survives or not.
Yeah, I mean, paint your armies and play in public, right? And see, if people want to play it and get demos in, that's how it starts, and you'll get some people to play. You may not get it. We're not going to get everybody. Let's be honest. I mean,
Well, we don't have to get everyone, right?
No, we don't need everybody.
With Clem, that I often joke with Clem that did you know that over 7 billion people have never played a war game before? But there are a lot of people potentially to grab, right? It's not just 40K players, but I mean, in where I am, it's me, it's basically right now it's just me. So I'm doing my Forge Fathers army, and I'm doing my Marauders army, and then I'll have them all finished, and then I can give demos in public places and go, oh, look how fun it is. I'll find friends to rock up and roll some dice with me, and then hopefully I can grow it from there. And the club who organised the Kings of War GT, they're about an hour and 10 minutes drive away from me, so not too bad. So I think we're going to have a sci-fi day at their game club pretty soon, and I'll definitely have to get up there to play some Kings of War with my new army when it's ready. Cool. So last question from Steve, the charming Steve Hildrew. Why are Ratkin the best army?
I don't know they're the best, but they do have a lot of tools, and they're a very good utility army that can do a lot of things. Yeah, that's the straight answer. Clem, why are Ratkin the best army?
Well, for me, as I don't play Ratkin, and I've played against them a few times, they're great because they're pretty hard to master, I think, because there's so many hordes to move around, tons of shooting, and you need to organize it well. You need to have your auras, your rallying organized properly for it to really work. It means it's pretty hard to stay focused and not clock out when you play Ratkin. And so for me, as an opponent of Ratkin, is the perfect army.
So my answer to that is inexpensive source of protein.
That's true. Very expendable. Yeah.
And then, so General Mo Gaddafi, thanks very much for replying. So he says, everything Steve Hildrew said, which is all the questions we've just addressed. Bit more focus on Firefight would be good. What does Mantic need to do to ensure Firefight doesn't suffer the same fate as Warpath? Or should they just ditch Warpath altogether and focus on Firefight? There's no need for 3 sci-fi games excluding.
Well, I think they've already started by it, because when they brought Warpath out, they were bringing Warpath and Firefight out at the same time, like on a Kickstarter or something. And I think focus on Firefight. Focus on it. Get it out there. Get people playing it. And then some point down the road, come back to Warpath. If you want to, you don't have to.
I mean, I never played.
No one's asking for it, so I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. No one's asking for it, Rob. I think that's a really good point. And
I say that there probably is people asking for it, but they're in the minority, right? And it's like, we joke all the time about Mantic have limited resources. They need to focus on the games they're selling. I hate to be the one to say that, but
exactly.
Focus on the ones that people want to play, and you can tell which ones they want to play because that's the ones that making you money.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. And I'm not sure, and I just don't know in terms of the rule how different Warpath and Firefight are, but, when we're already saying, do we have enough players for Firefight, I don't think we want to be necessarily splitting a very small niche to 2 game systems, right? Interesting stuff. But I'm hopeful for Firefight. Obviously I've invested in it. I'm really excited to play on Sunday.
Well, I will say that Mantic is trying to do, and we hinted at this on a podcast, they're trying to give it the push that it needs. So, they're hoping to run an event for Firefight, like an official Mantic event this year. So, they're doing what they need to do is put their money where their mouth is.
And Kings have got a tournament coming up, which is interesting because I think Elliot wasn't necessarily interested in the sci-fi stuff, and he's picked up Firefight. So
good sign then.
Yeah, good sign. Exactly. Yeah, good sign.
Or a bad sign. It means he's going to ruin the game for us. Depends on where you sit, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So I'll just do a little sum up then. So so in conclusion, I think we've solved absolutely none of the questions we set ourselves.
The world is still hungry, so
except
I just had a good time while doing it. So
that's true. Well, and as you say, you got to have a good time playing games. If you're not enjoying playing games or podcasting, don't do it.
What you're doing, yeah, exactly. And so for next month, Clem will have had our Berlin Gaming Day, not tournament. Yep. So I'm super excited about that. I'll be obviously bringing Deadzone and Firefight stuff. I'll be really, really excited about that.
Oh, me too.
And lots to get on with. And then I put this in every episode, and Clem finds it weird. Yeah, if anyone wants to record us a theme tune, by all means do and send it to us. That would be great. I've listened to other podcasts where listeners have just sent in high quality music. So I'm putting it out there. If someone has got the talent and wants to do it, by all means do. Just want to say thanks to Mantic Games. Our podcast is obviously 100% unofficial. And also, I saw this week, it's called tacticalwargames.world from Elliot Barrett, which is a really interesting website, which has got some free list builders, but also some tactics stuff, some painting stuff. So that was a really interesting website I came across last week. There's some kind of Firefight rules stuff on there as well, which was interesting. So that's cool. We've got a Facebook group, Mantic Universe Podcast, so please come along and join that. We post photos up there of the stuff we're working on. And obviously, if you're listening to this, I'm sure you already know what Countercharge is, right? But it's Rob's fantastic and incredibly global, and really it's the gold standard of.
We already said it's the Kirk without the goatee. It's the cleaned up version.
It's the non-evil podcast.
The non-evil Mantic podcast.
And also check out the Deadzone podcast for
Deadzone podcast. Deadzone the podcast. Those guys, really great job. Yeah, they do a really good job.
Yeah, they do a great job. But they do get tempted sometimes to talking about Kings of War.
Well, yeah, Brian's got the affliction. He won't admit it, but he's got the affliction. And so the funny story is they're from Lansing, or from that basically my hometown.
Which is where you're from, right? Yeah.
Right. So I met him, I don't know, 7 years ago, 8 years ago. And it's been fun to watch Brian. He's all about sci-fi, but he's got his elf army, and it's slowly, he played in he's played in a couple tournaments. He's got the bug.
Yeah. I'm sure I had a point to make. Oh yeah, it was, and it's just like literally coming up with the title for a podcast, and it's like my first idea was like Mantic Monthly, and then I thought, well, no, that sounds like we have to keep constantly explaining we're not an official podcast, right?
We did it. We did our first, before we did Countercharge, we did a podcast called Mantic Radio, and we signed a licensing agreement with Ronnie about using the word Mantic and all that, and we were gonna do all games for all people. And then it turns out we just really like Kings of War, so we end up dropping that. But and Mantic's now subsequently picked up Mantic Radio, and they've got their own pat here in the U.S. I think occasionally we'll put something out, but it's hard. Little did I know that Countercharge would also be a rule in Deadzone and in Firefight. So
right.
So we're covered.
Oh, there you go. You're future-proofed.
I'm future-proofed.
Yeah, and then we thought maybe Mantic Fanatics, but again, we're not the official Fanatics thing, so we'd be constantly explaining it's just us.
Plus, you're English and French. You're not fanatical.
Yeah,
American.
Exactly.
Americans.
Right, we said that as well.
Us.
Exactly. And then Clem was like, okay, what about Mantic Maniacs? And then we were like, yeah, but again, we're not really we're not the maniac type, are we? To be honest.
That's the advantage of being a non-native speaker, right? Like, I can throw out words that sound cool. I don't know all the subtext. Like,
it's funny.
Really?
I mean, you guys could always, if you don't like what you're called now, you could always put a poll up and see what people think you should call yourself.
No, it's good. I'm kind of, now we got it, I'm kind of relieved. But it was just like, what's everything? Okay, Universe. Okay, Mantic Universe podcast. That's fine. No, we're fine. It does the job,
Exactly. Well, we're hoping hopefully you guys will put a lot of content out. I like listening to content when I'm painting and walking my dog, and so
me too.
More content, the better.
I love podcasts. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Really, to be honest. But Rob, thank you so much for coming on. It's really an honor to have you, and it's been so much fun to have you as well.
Yeah, it's been great. It's fun to get outside of the normal shtick that we normally have. We're very confined. And it's like you guys got a hell of covering all the games. That's a lot of work. So God bless you. You're doing yeoman work. Because it's not so. I mean, you'll end up with 3-hour podcasts every time, and I'm like, no, I'm not signing up for that again.
That's, we're budgeted for 3 hours a month. Yeah, that's exactly the spot. Yeah.